Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for joining. Here's one of the things I didn't know until I started doing these videos. There's always like a minute delay, so I'm always a minute ahead of what everyone's seeing. I think it has to do with YouTube being crappy in their algorithms. But I also partially blame Janet Jackson. The reason I can't watch live Olympic sports anymore is because she decided she was going to expose her breast at the Super Bowl halftime show. And now, because of that, all of us must suffer throughout history. Can never watch anything truly live again. Yay! Thanks, Janet Jackson. So, yeah, I'll be starting in just a second here. We'll see if anyone comes on. So I have 5 or 6 topics, actually 7, to talk about today. We'll see if I get to them all. But there's a lot going on, so I'm going to try to diversify, talk a lot about the coup attempt against Trump, but also then diversify. What's up, Hugh? And talk about some of the other kind of stories and just craziness that's going on. So remember, I'll be doing these live streams every Monday night at 11 p.m. unless something occurs, like an illness or something like that. So I'm also going to be trying to do Thursday live streams during the day, probably around noon, and putting at least one video out a day the rest of those days. So please hit me up if you have any ideas, topics, or if you'd like to participate. So I'll just get started here. The first topic I wanted to talk about today is something that I talk about a lot, the idea that we discuss things, and I don't just mean me, I mean as people. We discuss things all the time that end up getting lost in the shuffle. The news cycle is so fast at this point. We have 24-hour news. You connected instantaneously through the internet. Sometimes something important will happen, and then 2 weeks later we forget about it. And one of the things that I think we need to do a better job of is taking a step back and looking at things as a full perspective and seeing kind of the people that we should be trusting, the people that we should give the benefit of the doubt to, and other things like that. Because so much of what we consume is still dependent on other people, particularly when you talk about the people that shape the public narrative, which you hear me talk about all the time: academia, the mainstream media, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley. And one of the things that happens is they lie, whether intentionally or out of ignorance, so often, yet they're never held to account because their lies then just become the next story and we forget all about what they did. So take a specific person like Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff lied and said he personally had seen evidence that Trump and people connected to Trump had illegally conspired with Russia to affect the election. That was a lie. Then he said, he wrote the memo saying he saw the evidence that there was no FISA abuse whatsoever and that the dossier was not integral in getting a FISA warrant against Carter Page. That was a lie. Then we saw how he lied in front of the original hearing where he said he was parodying, he said, when he got caught just making up stuff that the supposed transcript said. But what happens is he's never had to account because the lies come so fast and so quick and the news cycle's constantly changing that he gets away with it. Well, it's not just him, and I think most people on my channel would agree. We see that with Democrat leadership in general. We see it with the media. We see it with academia. If you saw the video I did yesterday, it was talking about the idea. I got the idea for that video from a David Pakman video I saw. David Pakman's a left-wing YouTube personality. I think he has a radio show as well. Seemingly intelligent person, and I would love to debate him at some point, but he's often finds himself to be on the wrong side of issues more often than not. I happened to see this video a couple weeks ago, and I've seen this repeated over and over before and after him, and this week on Twitter a lot, which is the idea that Trump supporters are less educated. Now, David Pakman, I'll give him a little more benefit of the doubt because he's going out of his way to be like, well, we're just talking amongst white people, and the reason we're not only talking about white people and Trump voters is because they're the only group that the educated, quote, and the less educated differ on who they vote for. But still, let's not kid ourselves. It's a dog whistle to kind of denigrate flyover country, conservatives, the average Trump supporter, etc. But anyways, this live stream's not about that video. You could watch it yourself and see my thoughts on that. But what I do want to talk about with that is the idea, what he says is, oh, I'm not saying you're dumber if you didn't go to college or anything like that, but maybe you're more gullible and you're more willing to fall for propaganda and lies that Trump might tell. Yet we could see it's Pakman and all these so-called elites, the more educated, that have spread Russia propaganda for 3 years, saying Trump was a stooge of Putin. That spread the dossier, that spread that it's not only did the FBI did nothing wrong, but to even question them was un-American. Every major story and scandal that they've gone after for Trump has turned out to be a lie. Every time they've protected the intel agencies or the Democrats or the credibility of someone like Adam Schiff, it turns out that was a lie. They were wrong. So it takes an extreme lack of self-awareness or your effort to propagandize people in the first place to somehow claim, as the Democrats often do, that it's your opponents that are actually the ones that are gullible when it's you that's proven over and over. So, that brings me to the topic I wanted to discuss today, and that is, let's take a specific situation and ask ourselves, we're in the midst of whatever this impeachment coup is, and it's still, if you read the articles of impeachment and the actual letters that were put out, it still heavily relies on the debunked Russia narrative. They talk about how it's basically a policy disagreement. They didn't like the fact that Trump wasn't sending this aid because they think that we need to be going to war with... Yeah, you're absolutely right, Hugh. You're absolutely right about that. It's interesting to see... so they talk about how it's our duty to fight Russia and we have to arm Ukraine to fight Russia. It's just McCarthyism, Cold War mentality. We used to blame the neocons. I said it, I was against the neocon, the forever war class. I voted for Ron Paul, even though I'm a conservative. I was against the Iraq war. I was against staying in Afghanistan. It's not to say I'm a peacenik. We should go after ISIS. We should go after Al-Qaeda, but we end up staying in these quagmires far longer than necessary, and oftentimes military industrial complex people, establishment people end up getting extreme wealth. For example, don't you think that it's a little odd that after we had this coup in Ukraine, right, after we had the revolution in Ukraine, all of a sudden all of these senators' kids are making tons of money while we're giving billions of dollars to the Ukraine? A bunch of unqualified people like, who did I see? Like, I think Pelosi's kid, certainly Hunter Biden, end up getting John Kerry's son, end up getting tons of money. We give aid, your tax dollars to the Ukraine, corrupt people in Ukraine, then give the politicians that vote to send that money kids jobs making millions of dollars. Coincidence? I think not. That's the type of quagmire that's able to happen when we're involved in these foreign regime change wars or coups or in other politics across the globe. It's a disaster. So, the question I want to ask is, what will we do? How will those be judged that have been so certain, they've been very specific, that everything alleging any corruption that Trump was discussing within the Ukraine is a lie? It's all been debunked. This is literally the establishment Democrat talking point. This is what every Democrat politician says, with maybe the exception of one or two, but literally their leadership, it's their main talking point. It's what the media says, it's what academia says, it's what the entertainment industry says, it's what the people in Silicon Valley say. Literally, it's been debunked. I have been doing video after video showing you how that's not the case. Now more evidence is coming out in different ways to show, there's way more to the story it seems. So let's take the idea of there's Hunter Biden did nothing wrong, right? That's the claim. Now, I've explained to you before how even all of these media people have admitted retroactively, well, yes, it had the appearance of a conflict of interest for Hunter Biden to be on the board of a company that his dad was in charge of ending corruption for. You think? But they even admitted that that had the appearance of corruption. But they say that Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. Now we see the news stories coming out. So Hunter Biden fathered, he has a lot of foibles. I'm not, look, you won't see me jump on people because they have drug problems. I don't really care, Hunter Biden as a person. He sounds like he has addiction problems. He's married to his dead brother's wife. There could be shadiness there. I don't know. I don't really care. I really don't. Like, the idea of him getting caught smoking crack in some strip club, I mean, it's a funny story, and if you want to pick on it, fine. I really don't care. I am concerned with the fact that there are credible allegations that he was working with a corrupt Ukrainian that everyone in the world, including the Obama administration, said this guy was corrupt and robbed the Ukrainian people of a bunch of money and was seeking to launder that money. Now, apparently Hunter Biden fathered a child with a woman who's taking him to court, and one of the allegations she's raising is she's providing evidence to the court that he was involved in money laundering, this specifically through China, though. And if you don't know, the case for China is going to be way worse than the case for Ukraine, because in Ukraine, Hunter Biden was receiving $80-something thousand a month. In China, he was getting contracts worth billions of dollars. Billions with a B. And China's by far our biggest geopolitical threat, which makes it So much worse. It's one thing to be dealing with a country that's supposedly our ally, like Ukraine, but our biggest geopolitical threat, and you're getting shady backroom deals. Remember, it wasn't that long ago we found out that, someone like Dianne Feinstein that had been voting for a bunch of policies favorable towards China actually had a Chinese spy that was in her employ for 10 years. So this isn't, right? That's what's going to make the situation even worse. But still, it's credible allegations of money laundering committed by Hunter Biden. Where's the media on this? Is this woman a liar too? Hashtag believe all women? Oh, wait, no. Right? Not when it's a woman who's going after someone connected to the Democrats. Now all of a sudden, it's a non-story. Now, yes, obviously this woman has an agenda. We should take what she says with a grain of salt. Because she's trying, probably, I would assume, to get as much money as possible off of her baby daddy. But why wouldn't this be covered? And it just further proves, it made me think today, I was just like, what's going to happen when it comes to light that Hunter Biden was incredibly corrupt? Because oftentimes the media, the Democrats, the entertainment industry, academia, etc., they make ambiguous claims, right? It's one of my biggest pet peeves. It's something that anytime I debate someone, friend or not, what I try to get them to do is nail down something like, right? Like, for example, back in October 2017, when I'm debating people, I made the claim, if the unverified opposition research was used to spy on a presidential campaign, it's the biggest political scandal in history. That's what I was saying in October 2017. I was right, by the way. People would say, that's impossible. There's no way they would have used the Steele dossier for a FISA warrant. No way. It wouldn't happen. And if they did, it would be verified. And even then, they would have used far more material other than just the dossier. So one of the things because I know how people are, I said, okay, we can have this argument. We'll see what the facts come. But if that's true, if this was unverified opposition research and it was the primary source for spying on the opposition, would you think that's a big deal? Oh, of course it is. Of course. I've talked about this in the last couple live streams. You saw all sorts of people on Twitter, on media, Democrats at the time that were saying, it is absurd to think the FBI would do that. Of course they didn't do that. Nunez is a liar. The Schiff memo is corrupt. Nunez is a liar. The FBI would never do this. It would be so corrupt, they'd never do something like this. Where are all those people today? Oh, deleting tweets. Ignoring it. So when people say things like that, right, when you get them definitively to say something, it's much more impactful to show that they have no credibility if they don't come out and apologize or admit they're wrong than something like this. They'll say, what Trump did was terrible, trying to get dirt on Hillary from Russians. And you're like, can you explain to me, they get away with that statement. No one pins them down. What exactly about that is bad? Just like with the, quote, quid pro quo with Trump, the Republicans have done a terrible job pinning them down. Please explain to me in specific detail what exactly about this quid pro quo was wrong. We know that you think Biden and Obama's quid pro quo was okay. So what is it about Trump's quid pro quo that you think was wrong? You have to get them to define as narrowly as possible. That way you can show they're hypocrites. But sometimes they do it themselves. Like, let me give you an example. It is now officially the FBI, the media, the Democrat, etc. I repeat myself, though. They're all the same establishment, deep state. It is their claim that the actual Crossfire Hurricane, the investigation into the Trump's team and possible collusion with Russia, began on July 31st, 2016. Okay, they're locked in now. So if we find out that there was actual confidential human sources contacting Trump's team before that time, then they lied. The FBI lied. All the people that assured you that the FBI, the predicate for the investigation was totally legit, that's what I.G. Horowitz said. Okay. So if we find out that before that, now watch them squirm because we will find that out. We will find out that particularly Brennan and the CIA was talking to Western intel assets such as in the UK, such as people like Joseph Mifsud. They were talking to them and trying to get information about Trump's team's connections to Russia well before this. Good stuff, Moses. So then what will they say? Well, this Ukraine situation is the same thing. They didn't say, well, what Hunter Biden did and what Joe Biden did was, okay, it was maybe unethical and there were some problems, but Trump's worse. They didn't say that. They said it has totally been debunked. They did nothing wrong. And it's a Russian conspiracy theory to suggest otherwise. So now any evidence we see of money laundering by Hunter Biden or him keeping money off the books or any evidence we see that the prosecutor that Biden forced out Shokin was actually investigating the case, all of that now is directly impugning the credibility of every single person that says this has all been debunked. So what's going to happen if we're, and what's even crazier is the same people saying this, they're setting themselves up for failure so bad, because they also are saying simultaneously, oh, Zelensky, the new president of the Ukraine, finally he's going to out corruption. He's a good, honest guy. So if someone in Zelensky's administration, and they said he's appointing good prosecutors, I don't know if this will happen. We'll have to see. It remains to be. I'm not going to sit here and pull your leg and pretend I know if the prosecutors in Ukraine are going to do the job, are going to find evidence of guilt, etc. I don't know. I know there's more than enough evidence for an investigation, which means there's no case to impeach Trump. That's been my take all along. But if we see one of these prosecutors Zelensky appointed come out and say, look, we're looking into this money laundering, we want to talk to Hunter Biden, what are they going to say? Now, I know what they'll say. They get away with lying. They get away with blatant hypocrisy because they control the narrative. And the Republicans don't do a good job of holding them to account. So they'll say, oh, Zelensky's just doing this to curry favor with Trump. That's what they'll say. Remember, go back and check out my video probably a month ago, 3 weeks ago, about a Time magazine article, where the article quoted prosecutors in Zelensky's office, saying that it's not Trump that made it hard for them to do their job and investigate corruption. You know who it is? It's the Democrats. And two things they did. One, because Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma, so they've had trouble for years actually getting to the bottom of it because they're worried that would upset their ally, Obama. And second, because the impeachment efforts, because they're afraid anything they do now to fulfill Zelensky's promise of rooting out corruption will be deemed as trying to help President Trump. So instead, they're going to wait to fulfill Zelensky's promise to his people to investigate corruption. They're going to wait until after the 2020 election so as to not be accused by the Democrats, the media, the FBI, the CIA, etc. of trying to help Trump. That's how corrupt the Democrats, the media, etc. They constantly say, oh, it's Trump that's interfering in other countries' prosecutorial decisions, judicial system. It's them. Once more, they accuse the others of exactly what they do. So I just thought it would be an interesting take to see all of these people save their tweets, save the videos that you see of Jake Tappers, the Mad Owls, etc. Save the New York Times articles. All the people that said this has been debunked, because they won't be able to run fast enough from the story once it shows out that they're wrong. Now, I still have a standing offer to anyone, and I mean anyone, regardless of your education level, regardless of how much you know about the situation, anyone who disagrees with me and thinks there is a case to impeach Trump, I have a standing offer to debate them. I'll be polite. You can see the debate I did with Destiny. It was a leftist. I felt I was polite with that. He started off with the non sequitur, which was, oh, no. We're saying that it's not that Trump's intent or anything like that. His argument was just the fact that Trump wanted to withhold aid at all proves that he should be impeached. And I said, well, presidents do that all the time. Well, then they should have all been impeached. I don't care. That's garbage. It's clearly the tactic of someone who knows they're outgunned. But I played along and was still polite, I felt. Maybe to a fault. So, yeah, if you or anyone you know would like to debate me, I'm trying to reach out to people. I really am. The guy from Secular Talk, for example, I saw him arguing with Michael Tracy. Michael Tracy is a left-wing person who hates Trump. I think he's a Bernie and a Tulsi supporter. But he realizes the impeachment thing's a sham and it's all about renewing the Cold War and tensions against Russia and covering up the Democrats' crimes, etc. And he's talking with the guy from Secular Talk, and the guy from Secular Talk's like, well, but even if you believe all that, you still have to vote yes on the first article of impeachment because clearly Trump did this for personal gain. There's not been one piece of evidence that Trump's done this for personal gain. At all. At all. None. Not. All it is just the assumption. The same people that are saying, oh, the only reason Trump would have ever done this was to help him in 2020. The same people that make that claim say, oh, and there's no possible way that Obama or Biden would have withheld that money for personal gain. What's up, D-State? Thanks for being here. And remember, one of the one of the things that I never hear anyone say is, and I'll move on to a different topic here in a second, but let's assume that Trump was doing this for personal gain, right? So let's say Trump's sitting down with Rudy Giuliani and a bunch of his cohorts, and they're saying, how can we parlay, this new Ukrainian president to go after Joe Biden, who we think is our biggest threat in 2020? Why in God's name would you not wait until Biden was the nominee before you sprung this? Right? They have something called an October surprise. That's the idea that you unleash some scandal or some big thing right before the November election because it's more impactful. If you release dirt a year or two out from an election, it loses its potency because it's baked into the cake at that point. Right? So, if it's true that Trump was doing this to help him in the 2020 election, why would he, one, not wait until Biden was the actual nominee, and second, wait until it was closer to the election? Why risk when he knew, remember, he didn't do this call in secret. He had all the normal people that are listening into the call. Why would he do something like this? This huge crime, selling out our country, abuse of power. Why would he do this when he stood to gain absolutely nothing? Biden's not even the nominee and probably won't be. It makes no sense. It's the same stupidity with the Russia narrative. None of the facts add up at all, right? With the Russian narrative, we were told, oh, Trump had these secret back channels, the Steele dossier, all those people were meeting in secret with, the Russians, and they're trying to steal the election and blah, 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 blah. But then part of their argument in the same dossier and stuff said the Russians were desperately trying to reach out to the Trump administration. Well, how? If they were in secret back channels stealing the election, why would they need to desperately reach out? So yeah, it's just nonsense. So we'll see. The evidence is coming out. No one's debunked anything. They're all liars. It's all this sheep mentality. They wait for one person to say something and then they all repeat it over and over and hope that makes it true. It does not. I have gone through video after video showing all of the problems with this. If you're trying to explain this, one of the things I like to do is try to explain these there's tons of names, tons of companies, tons of alleged corruption, abuse allegations, etc. Look, it's real simple. Anytime we have an executive official who's threatening to withhold taxpayer money unless someone fires a prosecutor who's looking into his family's business, there should be an investigation. It's that simple. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Conservative, Liberal, Green Party, Libertarian. That's something we should all agree on. Doesn't matter who the person is, what party they're from, who cares? Yep, if you're threatening to get someone fired who's looking into your son's company, that should be looked into, especially if you're using U.S. tax dollars to accomplish it. That's all Trump was doing. They're trying to impeach Trump because his big crime was, one, winning the election, and second, investigating corruption from the Democrats. It's that simple. I could argue with the best of them, all the specifics beyond that, but no one could get beyond that. It's that simple. It should be investigated. So, all right. I'm going to skip a couple points I was going to make and go to something that's kind of connected to that. That's this idea. What's this guy's name? I saw it all over Twitter Sunday, and he released a book. Eichenwald, maybe? I don't know. But he was on CNN and promoting the idea that if you're talking about Ukrainian interference or if you're talking about the Bidens, then you're promoting Russian talking points. It's spreading Russia's agenda. So I talked about this before, and I am going to do a specific video on this probably tomorrow, but it's worth discussing here for a moment. The irony here is this is maybe the best example of the Democrats, the media, the deep state, accusing others of exactly what they do. So I've argued for a long time, and I've never got any pushback on this, right? What is the biggest example of Russian interference into our 2016 election? Now, remember, take a step back and look at what, if we to believe all these great intelligence people, the FBI that's corrupt. Oh, I'm sorry, they're not corrupt, says the FBI, the deep state, the Democrats, the establishment. They're just so never forget this, never. The Democrats, the FBI, the media, academia, their argument is, oh no, it's not that the FBI is corrupt. They're so incompetent, they didn't know that you're not supposed to alter evidence to say the opposite of what it says. They didn't know. That's how incompetent they are. That's their argument. That's their argument for their defense. So always remember, anytime we talk about, oh, the FBI says, remember, that's who they are. They don't know you're not supposed to alter evidence. It's just incompetence, just general incompetence, something that kindergartners would know not to do. They just didn't know. They didn't know. But what did they tell us? They said, yes, they said Putin wanted Trump to win. That would, why, I don't understand why that's nefarious anyways, like that claim. You know, I'm sure Iran wanted Obama to win, okay? So, I mean, you had Hillary calling for a no-fly zone over Syria. That's basically an act of war with a nuclear superpower in Russia. So yeah, assuming that Putin values, I don't know, humanity and trying to avoid a nuclear war, probably any credible person would not wanted a warmonger who was trying to wipe you off the face of the earth to win the election. Sounds reasonable, but even still, even beyond that, what we were told was the Kremlin is basically, they're constantly just trying to cause dissension in the United States. That's beneficial to them because a united United States is a big enemy to Russia, but one that's divided and bickering amongst themselves is less likely to, you know, be a geopolitical adversary to Russia because they're fighting amongst themselves, right? So they wanted to cause division. What was the best example of division that they caused? Was it 12 Russian trolls using Pokemon Go and Facebook? No, that's a joke. Was it their alleged, which I don't believe now because the FBI is corrupt. I mean incompetent. They're just incompetent. My bad. The alleged hacking of the DNC and Podesta emails? I mean, that would be a bigger deal than the Russian trolls, obviously. But even still, are we talking about the WikiLeaks today? No, not really. The media did their best to shill for it then. Oh, remember Cuomo telling you on CNN? It's illegal for you to read WikiLeaks. You have to come to us to see what it says. Instead of looking at the actual truth that was in the emails that showed all sorts of things like they were screwing Bernie Sanders, that there was corruption occurring within the media. Instead of looking at that, they said, oh, the messenger, this was Russian hack, so we shouldn't look at any of it. The biggest effectual example of Kremlin disinformation causing dissension in the 2016 election and beyond was easily, and again, this is their version, this is the media, the establishment version, the Mueller report version, that the Steele dossier and the allegations within it were sourced by two Kremlin officials connected to Putin. Now we know, after a Mueller report and the IG report, that the claims in there about Trump getting peed on, Trump team members being paid billions of dollars in gas company shares to steal the election with Russia, etc., those were all lies. That was disinformation sourced from Kremlin officials, or in some case, Christopher Steele just making stuff up. So a foreign spy regardless. That's the Democrat narrative. Now, that was so effectual that not only did our FBI use it to spy on people connected to Trump's campaign, but I think I read that something like still 39% of Democrats feel that they believe the dossier, they believe that Trump's a stooge of Putin. That's millions of people in this country, to this day, think that their president is currently committing treason and is under the thumb of Vladimir Putin. Millions. The most powerful investigative agency in the history of the world used this information to spy on Trump's campaign. The impeachment articles today are mentioning things that were in the Mueller report and are mentioning Russia. Adam Schiff, Swalwell, Maxine Waters, prominent Democrats still to this day bragging, yes, we think that Trump illegally conspired with Russia. Now, if you're Putin, and it's true that you're trying, your officials are trying to sow discord in the United States, can you think of a better example? You make something up about peeing hookers on Trump and his team working with Russia, and it's believed by everyone in the establishment. The FBI, the Democrats, the media, academia, the entertainment industry, Silicon Valley, they all believe this. That's all they talked about for 3 years. We had to have investigation after investigation. They accused Trump of obstructing justice for fighting back against this corrupt investigation. That's insanity. That would be, you couldn't ask for better division to be caused. Based on what? One little interview you gave with Christopher Steele, these Kremlin agents? Of course, Mueller couldn't be bothered to investigate that Russian interference. He said that was outside of his purview. Now, who spread this? The media, the Democrats, the FBI, academia, Silicon Valley, the entertainment industry. For 3 years, they uncritically spread Russian disinformation, causing, perhaps in my lifetime, the greatest division that we've seen. Vitriol against Trump, vitriol against his supporters. Much of it based on this disinformation, sourced by Kremlin officials. Now, those people have the gall to sit there and tell you and criticize you. If you want to investigate Ukrainian election interference, or if you want to investigate the corruption of the Bidens, that's doing Russia's bidding. That's spreading Russia talking points. This is what's so aggravating. It's the sheer hubris, the sheer arrogance to do something and then look you in the eye when you're not doing that and saying, oh, it was okay when I did it, but if you do something, I'll accuse you of doing exactly what I did. The Democrats, the FBI, the establishment, they are making it immoral and illegal to question or investigate their crimes. That's what this is about. So I'm going to do a video because I think that people need to understand where this is coming from. It's not Russia disinformation. Ukraine did interfere in the election. They admitted it. Leshchenko admitted it in the Financial Times in August of 2016. That's 2 months before the election. Artem Sitnik admitted it on audio, which you can check out in the Glenn Beck show. He was the head of basically their FBI called the NABU. He admitted to interfering to helping Hillary in the 2016 election. We have the same people, the same Democrat impeachment witnesses from the State Department that said, oh, there was no Ukrainian election interference, none. We have them in closed-door testimony admitting that they were pressuring the Ukraine to drop investigations into Ukrainian election interference. And then they lied about it. In their open testimony, they said, oh, we never did that. And those are the people telling you, oh, if you look into this, that's helping Russia. I mean, this is a joke. You don't have to be heavily involved in politics. You just have to have a cursory glance and be reasonably objective to see what a joke this is. I mean, for God's sakes, they're literally trying to make the argument. These aren't fringe people. This is Fiona Hill. This is Vindman. Yovanovitch. These are the awesome people, heroes at the State Department. The smartest, the best and brightest, just like the FBI. They talk about them the same way. Notice that? They're all making the argument. It wasn't Ukraine that interfered, it was Russia. As if the American people, as if you out there are too dumb to realize, well, can't two people interfere? Can't two countries interfere? That's how desperate they are. That's how blatant their lies are. I mean, you can't look into what I did. I mean, it reminds me of, like, you know, I have two brothers and a sister, but one brother that's real close to me in age, like 2 years. It reminds you of, like, when you were a kid, like you're 10 and your brother's 8, and it's like, oh, if you tell mom on me, then I'm going to make sure, you know, I'll tell her that you're just doing that because you're mad about something else. Like, just stupid, petty children arguments. No, if you look into bad things about me, you're helping Russia. That's what you're doing. You can't look into bad things about me or you're helping Russia. Are you kidding me? Are you a child? What up, Div? Thanks for being here. Yeah, I just want to let everyone know, Div is one of the 2 people that supported me on Patreon. I'm really appreciative, and we're in the process of doing a video together. Hopefully after the holidays we'll do that. So thanks a lot, Div. But I mean, it's obvious nonsense. It was the media. It was the FBI. It was the Democrats. It was academia. It was the entertainment industry. It was Silicon Valley that spread Russia disinformation for 3 years, are continuing to spread it. They did it. So for them to then act like, oh, to question them is now spreading Russia disinformation. I mean, it's nonsense. This has been the entire thing. It's one big Hippocratic show. Remember, the original allegation was Trump committed treason or sedition or whatever because he tried to get dirt on Hillary from the Kremlin. And so the way the Democrats were going to prove this was by getting dirt on Trump from the Kremlin. Except unlike Trump's team, who never did get any actual dirt, the Democrats did get dirt on Trump from the Kremlin that we now know was a lie. What's up, John? Nice to see you. Every single situation. Them getting dirt from the Kremlin on Trump is good because that dirt was just trying to prove that Trump was trying to get dirt from the Kremlin. You can't make this up. Them spreading Russia disinformation for 3 years was good because it helped them stop you from investigating actual crimes because that would be helping Russia. Just like they say every time Trump correctly criticizes a Democrat, right? Yeah, maybe he goes over the line as far as his stylistic choices, but whatever. He'll call out a Democrat and they say, that's causing division. That's terrible. You can't cause names. And then all they do is call him a Nazi. Say he's committing treason. No president's been attacked more than Trump. Probably in history, definitely in my lifetime. Yet when he responds back, they're like, can you believe it? Oh my God. You remember, what's her name? The princess, Meghan Markle, is that her name? Remember she did this interview crapping on Trump? And then Trump just said something tame back to her. It's like, eh. And they were, oh my God. He criticized Meghan Markle. Yeah, she started it. It's the same with this whole, he made this joke about Debbie Dingle's husband who's dead. Maybe he's looking up, not down. In other words, joking he was in hell. When he was alive, Dingle told Trump to go to hell several times. It's just a joke. It's not a big deal. But they have to get the vapors because they have to accuse. They think, and this has been the case with the Democrats, this is why Trump's so successful. This is why so many people like him. It's hard to put into words. You're tired of the double standard of you and the people you support being attacked constantly. And if you raise your hand even for a second, then they're like, you're a monster. You see this a lot, and I hate to bag on this, but you see this a lot with kind of the feminist movement. Where you'll see these radical feminists, they'll be spitting on police, or they're outside a college campus, linked arms, won't let people get through. They're shoving people, they're hitting people, smacking them. And then finally, someone gets furious and pops them back, and everyone's like, oh my God, did you see what that guy did to that woman? I've seen this at the bar. You'll see some woman get up in some guy's face, slap him 3 or 4 times. Then eventually the guy's enough and whacks her. And everyone's like, can you believe that guy hit her? Which, again, I'm against hitting women, but if someone, hey, if you're going to beat someone, if you're going to physically assault them over and over again, they have a right to defend themselves. Yes, you should show more restraint with someone that you think is physically weaker than you, whether it be a woman or someone way smaller than you. Whatever. I'm not really getting into that debate tonight. But that's what it's like. They call you names, they poke, they spread disinformation every day in, day out. Trump's a Russian student. Trump's a Russian student. I remember watching Mad Al and seeing stuff like this. Did you know where Trump's yacht is? That the guy who leased the lot next to Trump was a Russian guy. Trump's tax returns. Could Trump have done business in Russia? He's a Russian agent. Russia. Oh my God, all these people, they're all Russians. Trump's Russian. Oh my God. And then we find out that was all lies sourced by the Kremlin. They have no self-reflection. And then as soon as Trump says, Yeah, we're going to look into, after you've looked into my crimes for 3 years, now we're going to look into Democrat crimes. They go, how dare you? This is abuse of power. This is spreading Russian disinformation. This is obstruction of justice. Yeah, Evil Smile, that is one of the things. That's one of my biggest pet peeves. Here's the thing, right? If you get to know me, hopefully I show this on my channel, but definitely if you get to know me in real life, I love joking around. I can be friends with people that totally disagree with me on things. But one of the things that I had a very dispersed group of friends. I mean, everyone from people that work on oil rigs to people that are vegan, Buddhists, that, kind of maybe support Antifa, everywhere in between. Government defense contract. One of the things I think kept us together was we all had a good sense of humor. So even if we disagreed with each other, we could laugh, I'm so upset that this idea, it used to be the right? I'm a fan of Lenny Bruce. And for those of you who don't know, Lenny Bruce was this comedian, 50s and 60s? And he used to be arrested for obscenity. In particular, it was jokes. Oftentimes it was jokes he was making about the Catholic Church. And so police would show up and they would just wait for him to tell this joke and then handcuff him and take him out. And that was the right. That was, people in the religious right that were going after him. That was wrong. You saw, there was this famous situation, late 80s, early 90s. There was this rap group called 2 Live Crew. Not very good, but they had this album that was pulled off shelves because it was too obscene. And so you had 2 Live Crew, Twisted Sister, and John Denver. If you don't know those people, Twisted Sister is like this metal band that would dress up in drag, like Dee Snider was their lead singer. This rap band that would sing about all kinds of stuff. And then folk singer John Denver, who's probably never cursed or had a mean thought in his life, they went to Capitol Hill to argue about the problems of censorship. That was censorship coming from the right. When I was growing up, I was into video games. You had this guy, Jack Thompson, who was this kind of like lawyer that was this moral busybody who was going after like the original Grand Theft Auto and, we have to censor this and censor that, Used to have the comic book, and even well before any of this, you had the comic book code where you had a bunch of people primarily on the right that were telling art, that has to be censored. They couldn't handle art, they couldn't handle jokes. I was against that. Now, one of the things I say to the Republicans all the time, the Republican Party, the apparatus that's running it, I'm sorry, sometimes I find them inept. Why aren't we reaching out to younger people? Why are younger people predominantly going to things like socialism and the Democratic Party? One of the best ways we could sell the Republican Party, or even if you're not interested in Republicans, that you could say the Democratic Party is a danger to young people, is the Democrats' hatred of comedy. All of a sudden, they forgot what a joke is. One, if you tell a joke that's in bad taste, it doesn't matter. 30, 40 years from now, if you disagree with the Democrats, they'll dredge that up and ruin your life. They'll get you fired. I'm willing to bet most young people have done something untoward. I know, I certainly did. I'm not going to lie and pretend I didn't tell offensive jokes or say offensive things. Of course I did. Almost every young person I know did. That's reality. So if you're young, why would you vote and encourage people that are just waiting for you to mess up one time to ruin your life? That's J.K. Rowling. She's canceled because she made the outrageous statement that trans men aren't men. There's still biological differences. Oh, Google's shutting you down, but you have to explain what you mean. If you're leaving, see you, man. But yeah, Trump jokes around and says, "Hey, Russia, if you hacked Hillary's server, why don't you release those emails?" That was clearly a joke. The context of that was Hillary obstructed justice. Yeah, me too, Dib. Of course I do. Hillary obstructed justice, and her team destroyed subpoenaed emails. And the FBI was like, "Oh, we don't know where they're at. We can't find them." And so Trump's joking because he understood the corruption behind the FBI. He understood that the fix was in, that they weren't going to charge anyone connected to Hillary with anything. So the FBI's like, "Oh, Congress subpoenaed this evidence and then it got deleted and there's nothing we can do. Oh, well, I'm sure it was all in good faith." So Trump's joking because everyone knew and had been talking about for years that Russia and China, and probably our allies as well, had access to everything on Hillary's server in her bathroom that was unsecured. So he's joking around. Yet the Democrats pretend they actually included it in the impeachment talk. It's included in the articles of impeachment under the abuse of power section that Trump requested Russia hack Hillary. It was a joke. Everybody knows it. If you're going to be treasonous, if you're going to be seditious and commit some horrible crime and work with a hostile foreign power to take down your opponent, would you do it on national television? Meanwhile, all of a sudden they understand joking when, remember, just a couple months ago, Hillary was being interviewed and she was complaining about that. And she's like, well, I'm calling on for a foreign country to find Trump's tax returns. Okay. Where's the outrage there? I understood. I understood that it was a joke. I understood that she's just saying, look, she's wrong. She's saying what Trump said was serious. So if I said that, she disproves her point by her own comment, in other words. The fact that she's clearly not serious in asking a foreign power to hack Trump's tax returns proves Trump's point that he was making a joke. But we have to pretend all of a sudden, oh, it's screwing up how you type? That's crazy. I've never seen that. Unreal. But we have to pretend that, oh, that wasn't a joke. That was serious. We have to pretend. And this happens all the time. They lose their sense of humor. It's like, oh, everything Trump does is very stoic and serious. And it's garbage. Now look, I know it's easy to say, oh, Rob's saying that because he's a Trump supporter. Anyone who's watched me, I defended Kathy Griffin. I defended Ralph Northam. I defended Trudeau with the blackface thing. It's jokes. They might be in bad taste, but come on. It's outrageous. So, yeah, that's all I have on the idea of ask yourself, who spread more Russia disinformation? Where are the Republicans calling this out? You know? Please elect me in 2022. I'll go on Jake Tapper's show and call him out. It'd be the easiest thing in the world. Oh, you're going to spread these debunk Ukraine? It's been debunked. These are Russian talking points. Jake, your network spent 3 years dedicated to spreading information in the Steele dossier that you knew was sourced by Kremlin officials that we now know to all be made up lies. And you spread it for 3 years, Jake. So please. Secondly, no, it's not been debunked. Here's why. But no one does it. That's why I say the best I've seen it done lately is Don Jr. when he was on The View. If you haven't seen that clip, go watch it. You don't just arbitrarily go out. That's, in my opinion, that's stylistically not the way to do it. You go on one of these shows, fine. You go on, or even if you're having a debate with someone, you try to assume good motivations with whoever you're on with. But once they show themselves in front of you, then you respond in kind. So when Don Jr. goes on there, he waited, and predictably they're like, your dad's a terrible man. He said grab him by the P word. Oh. That's another thing. Let me talk about that for a second. I would never mention names. I personally know people that have called for Trump to be removed from office or said how he's a misogynist, terrible, horrible person that should never be allowed to be president because of the Billy Bush grab him by the P word thing. I've heard people say that literally I've sat at the bar with and heard say worse. Literally. I've heard women talk worse than that. But we have to pretend. All of a sudden, we all have to pretend, oh, my, people don't talk like that. That was outrageous. Can you believe that? So you mean to tell me, if anytime you're joking with your friends throughout history, if there was a camera there, and that could be released if you ever decide to go against the establishment, you're okay with that? You've never had a moment in your life when you've said something like that? That's what you're trying to tell me? I swear to God, when I ran for Congress, I swear this is true, they actually asked, people acted like, because I was running against 24 people, the first place I went to and we're all like talking about our beliefs and, you know, our policies and stuff like that. Literally, the Northam blackface scandal had just came out. So people were asking like, oh, is there anything in your yearbook? There's nothing in my yearbook that's bad. Have you ever done anything in your past that, you know, if it got released, it could be deemed offensive? Yes! Of course I have. You want to know why? Because I'm human. But some of these people are pretending like, nope, they could look over my life with a fine-tooth comb. They'd never find anything. BS. And oftentimes you see it, the hypocrisy is so astounding, you could literally see it happen within hours. So remember you had that guy, I don't remember the specific details now, but it was one of the best cases of schadenfreude in recent memory. So you had this guy who was like, he had something to do with beer. He like had a viral video that went with drinking Anheuser-Busch or something, and then he ended up getting a bunch of donations, and he donated it to a children's hospital. And then this reporter for a local newspaper dug up tweets that this guy had that were offensive when he was in high school. And so then Anheuser-Busch dropped their sponsorship, and it was a result, a bunch of children's hospitals ended up not getting a bunch of money that could have actually helped children. Then literally within that day, people started looking at this reporter who broke the story, and he said all sorts of vile, racist, homophobic crap all over his Twitter. Worse than what the original guy said. Now he's playing the victim when he gets fired. Oh, it was a witch hunt. People were out to get me. That's what you did. I'm so tired of the outrage mob. As soon as it's turned on them, all of a sudden it's, oh my God, how dare, I'm a victim. But they have no problem being part of that mob. So yeah, Don Jr., they're saying, oh, grab him by the P word. Oh, your dad's a terrible person. He says, look, he gives him a chance to get out of it. He says, look, it was a private conversation with someone he was friendly with. He didn't know he was being recorded, right? That's good stuff, Tim. He said, it wasn't a big deal. And they're like, no, they doubled down. So what did Don Jr. say? He's like, okay, Joy, you've painted yourself in blackface. Should we judge you for that? Which you can go back if you are very interested in the nuances of blackface. I did a video way back then when that stuff was going on with the Northam of the different types of blackface. And if you don't feel like watching it, here's spoiler alert. I don't care. If you wore blackface and it was a joke, even if it was the worst kind, the minstrel paint, and you're like, yeah, it was a joke. If you really hate black people, screw you. I have no time of day for racists. If you told an insensitive joke and it was a joke, okay, I'm fine with it. You don't have to apologize to me. I don't care. You can tell. You know when people are actual racists and people are just telling jokes. And if I tell a joke, and people that know me, I'm not big on like racial jokes or anything like that. But if I tell any sort of joke and it offends someone that I respect, I'd apologize to them if it's someone I respect or personally know. But if you're just virtue signaling, no, I'm not going to apologize. I don't care. It was a joke. But yeah, if you, on YouTube, if you search blackface in my channel, you'll see the video I did on it. Anyways, it was funny because she technically did wear blackface. I would say, though, that it's of almost the least offensive kind because she darkened her skin to portray herself as like a soul singer. So to me, she was showing admiration for darker people. But nonetheless, by the rules of the left, that's blackface. But Whoopi comes to her defense. She says, oh, no. I'm black and I wasn't offended. Thanks, Whoopi. I'm glad you speak for the entire black community. Isn't that great? That's one of the most offensive things to me. Why is it in like minority communities, people think they can speak for the whole community? I'm white. I would never in a moment think that I could speak for all white people. Oh, someone did something that was deemed offensive to white people. It's cool. Rob Knorr's white, and I speak for everyone when I say, that we're either offended or not offended. That's ridiculous. Everyone would be like, what? Shut up. But somehow you get away with it if you're black or Hispanic or gay or a woman. It's a joke. Newsflash, I know this will come as a shock to all the cultural Marxists on the left, but all of those groups that you consider oppressed, here's the truth about them. They're all individuals with their own brains. They can think for themselves. They're not monolithic. Modus, I know it sucks that it's screwing with the way you type, but it is coming out funny. And then he turns his ire to Whoopi herself, which to me, this is unforgivable. This isn't a joke, right? If Whoopi would have said this is a joke, I could have handled it. But Roman Polanski, he, Oscar winning, I think he won an Oscar for The Pianist, but a director, way back in the day, anally raped a 13-year-old girl. He drugged and anally raped her. That is as heinous as a crime as you could imagine. He fled the country when he was charged with the crime. And he's still not allowed back in our country because of this. Hundreds upon hundreds of prominent Hollywood people have signed petitions asking the United States to drop this. Whoopi Goldberg said on The View that it wasn't rape. Drugging a 13-year-old girl and anally raping her, that's not rape. That's what Whoopi Goldberg said. So Don Jr. brought that up. And she's infuriated. Now that's something that does deserve to be brought up. But notice it wasn't like Don Jr. came on and they're like, hey, welcome to The View, Don. And he was like, hey, great to be here. Hey, Whoopi, remember when you said Roman Polanski didn't commit rape? He waited for them to make an attack on him and his father and then showed that they're bigger hypocrites and have done worse and said worse. Not in the context of joking. And they couldn't believe it. They were incredulous. How dare he? That's what you see all the time. Our side never fights back. Constantly on the defense. Constantly. Getting called racist, being smeared, getting called immoral. So, Don Jr. did a great job there. So, that brings me to my next topic that I wanted to talk about. I could care less about the specifics of this, but I guess what's the name of this magazine? Christian Today, or maybe someone here knows it, but it's been all over. Basically, it's some evangelical magazine, and their editor came out and wrote that you're not a Christian, you're a bad Christian, basically, if you support Trump. If you're a Christian, you shouldn't support Trump. I don't care. I have a lot of thoughts on this, right? That's right. You're exactly right, Evil Smile. And that's how we should all be. That's how I try to operate. I try to assume good faith. Even someone who disagrees with me, I try to assume they're arguing in good faith. But if you're going to make personal attacks, then I could do so as well. I could do it in a charming way, and I don't have to, be terrible. But Don did a great job. He was affable. He even gave them an out while he was saying it. He said, look, you said this about Roman Polanski. Maybe we should just drop it, Christianity Today. That's right. Okay? So, here's some thoughts I have on it. Just cursory thoughts at the beginning, then I'll get to the main point. I don't like when either side implies that your religion means you have to vote for a certain party. Now, I do think that you could make credible arguments that if you're truly religious, there are certain issues. So I get that, a right-wing Christian will say, like, how could you be for third trimester abortion and call yourself a Christian? I get that. Right? But as far as I'm concerned, I don't like to play that game. Here's my feeling on religion. You ready? And I did this. Dib saw this. I did a video with a friend of mine, and somehow we ended up talking about religion the whole time. I don't care at all about your religion or lack of religion. I just don't. I care about who you are as a person, how you act, your actions. That's what I care about. If you came to those actions because of your religious faith or because of your lack of religious faith, great, good for you. I would call myself a Christian, but I don't go to church. I'm not in an organized religion. I just believe in the idea of being Christ-like. That's it. I fail all of the time. If the goal is to be like Jesus, then I'm a hypocrite 99.9% of the time. I get it. I'm just saying that's the goal I would aspire. That's what I think we should aspire to be. If you're not religious, that's fine too. Maybe you have this idea that you aspire to. Maybe you whatever. But your actions are what matter. Like, let me give you an example. Well, that's not a good example. So, that's just it. That's what I think. This idea, though, that, you see Buttigieg do it a lot. And you've seen people on the right do it a lot. Like, W. Bush did this. Like, these calls to religious sanctity and morality for a reason to vote for someone. I don't get it. Like, that's not what it's about. And I think even if I'm no religious scholar, even if you read the Bible, this is the case. Let me just put it this way. This might be the best way to summarize my view. I'm smart enough and politically shrewd enough to know I was running for Congress in the most conservative district in Pennsylvania. In other words, the more religious right I could be, the more Trump supporting I could be, the better my chances would have been. Despite that, there were several issues that I went against what I knew would be the prevailing orthodoxy. One of them was gay marriage. I support gay marriage. I had a lot of people, and I called hundreds of people on the phone. Tons of people, that was a deal breaker. They were just like, no. And my point was, I can make a religious case for gay marriage. My religious case for gay marriage is I do dislike abortion. I do think that monogamous relationships are preferable. The two-parent households are preferable. And so I would rather push for an institution of two consenting adults, whatever their sex is, to have a chance to have a more nuclear family, which I think is an important thing. I also never understood, I'm getting more into religion than I wanted, but I never understood kind of the vitriol against homosexuality as opposed to other types of sex for pleasure. Like, my understanding was basically the Bible was kind of making the claim like, hey, you should get married before you have sex because the idea of sex for pleasure, so like non-traditional forms of sex, like oral sex, things like that, that's all kind of wrapped up in this same, like, gay sex is bad. Well, many people I know that are against gay sex probably had sex when they were in high school or before they were married, and somehow they don't focus on that as much. So, whatever. I just don't care. I just don't. I think that the other thing is that it's pretty obvious to me that Jesus wasn't judging people, right? I mean, he's talking to thieves, he's talking to prostitutes, he's saying, hey, you're still my brother or my sister. He wasn't the judge. Leave the big guy upstairs, judge. So if you have a problem with homosexuality, that's fine. It shouldn't affect our laws. We have a separation of church and state, and if it's a sin, then God will deal with it. That's above my pay grade. So I just don't care. I just don't. So that's kind of my feeling on religion. Now, I get it. I respect people that are Christian, but let's not kid ourselves. There's been plenty of Christian hypocrisy. It's like the Schadenfreude. The people you hear on the left that are like, believe all women, respect all women. The ones that are the most militant about it, almost every time you end up finding out, they're abusive to women. Just like you remember, like in the 90s, I remember you had all these preachers like, homosexuality is a sin and blah, blah, blah. Then they'd find them like snorting crank, hooking up with gay hookers and stuff. It's just like, what a joke. But, anyways, that's my feeling on it. The idea that, so I just don't get this, that sort of argument. But specifically the Christian, whatever it was, the name of this magazine. Of course the left's using this as an example of, see, even the religious. Now the left, they could give two crants about Christians. They don't like Christianity. On the whole. Now, this isn't because they think that it's immoral in the sense of its preachings or that people are hypocrites. It's quite simple. They view Christianity as the oppressor. They view it as flyover country, right? Just like white's bad, white's oppressor. Male's bad, male's oppressor. Straight's bad, straight's oppressor. Being a native citizen of this country's bad, that's oppressor. Being a Christian's bad, that's oppressor. So Christianity, oppressor. Islam, other religions, oppressed, right? That's their cultural Marxism. So it's funny to see them all of a sudden. It's just like the Constitution. They crap on the Constitution and say the people that wrote it are slave owners and we need to tear down their statues. But as soon as they think it could politically benefit them, now they're preaching about the Constitution. The same's true of Christianity, right? So now all of a sudden, Christian Today said this. Yeah. It's just one guy's opinion. Who cares? If I find one Muslim that's like, hey, I don't like the Democratic Party, am I like, well, that's it. Democrats are anti-Islam. Of course, it'd be insanity. Right? So, anyways, that shows the kind of insanity of it. But what I wanted to talk about here was the idea of morality, right? Because that's when I hear all this talk of religion, and that's what it comes down to me. And this is something, look, if the right does it, I don't agree with this as either, right? I hate when people take complicated issues and act like they're morally superior, whether it be through religion or not. And if you disagree with them, then you must be an immoral person. And the left does this far more than the right. They might not call it religion, but that's in effect what it is. Look at climate change. That's a religion. Can't disagree with it. You have to believe it based on faith. If you're an apostate, if you leave the farm on it. Oh, and real quick, I'll say before I get into this whole morality speech, why would look by any stretch of the argument, like Trump has a lot of personal issues. Like he is, I'm 99.9% sure, an adulterer. That's not good. I'm someone who's married. I take marriage seriously. I never was one who thought it was cool if you're dating someone and, you'd be hanging around with guys like, oh, I slept with some chick last night. My girlfriend doesn't know. I don't think that's cool. I think it's terrible. I'm not going to not talk to you over it, but it's not something that I'm like, oh, wow, what a great guy. That's, so I get it. That's not very Christian-like behavior. I get it. But clearly, I can see a very reasonable case to say we all fall short. If you're Christian, we all fall short. We've all sinned. I'm voting for policies, not, the character of the person. And I mean, I would argue, I think that you can vote for how you want, but if that's your argument, if your argument's like, I'm going to vote for the Democrat, the party of corruption, the deep state, the establishment, the party of lying, the party of xenophobia, the party of, all this crazy stuff, identity politics, driving a wedge into this country. And I'm going to vote, and my primary reason is I don't like Trump's mean tweets. Yeah. I think Trump's a bad dude. Okay, I guess. Being modded? I don't have any mods. Yeah, okay, Modus. Well, have a good one, man. Thanks for being here. But, so, yeah, they're clearly voting for the policies. But this idea of morality, this is what I wanted to get to. I have these debates constantly where my friends on the left, or people that aren't my friends, that just argue with me on the left, they come from things assuming they are the more moral position. And it's almost every issue. And I hate this type of argument because I am willing to concede that people could disagree with me on a lot of my issues, but that doesn't mean that they're immoral or something like that. So let me give you some specific examples. And I think that the Democrats playing up this Christianity Today thing is trying to get that. And you see Buttigieg do this a lot, where they're trying to present themselves as somehow morally superior. And I just don't buy it. It's a shady trick that you see often. By the way, I don't like that type of politics. I don't like when you bring up the oh, let's bring on stage this woman and her child was killed by an illegal immigrant. Look, I'm very much for stopping illegal immigration, it's particularly the criminals out, etc. But I understand that that's a raw appeal to emotion, right? Just like the counter arguments, like here's an illegal immigrant who's a Rhodes Scholar. It's like both of those are outliers. I don't think the average illegal immigrant's a murderer. I don't think the average illegal immigrant's a Rhodes Scholar. I think the average illegal immigrant commits a lot of serious crimes, even if they're not murder, and that's worth dealing with, such as identity theft, illegally crossing the border in the first place, etc. So it's all sides that I don't like these sort of emotional, moral appeals. I really don't. But so let's take an issue such as let's take an issue such as inner city policy, the war on poverty, right? Modus, I don't know what to do, man. I really do apologize. My technical prowess is very limited. I don't know if there's anything I could do to help you if something's messing with your ability to chat. I really have no clue, man. I'm sorry, but so like the war on poverty. So I'm against affirmative action. I'm against a lot of what we call like a welfare state. I'm against incentivizing single motherhood, and a lot of things like that. Now, I'm told by people on the left, that means I'm immoral. That means I don't care about the inner city. I don't care about black people. I'm a racist. I'm a scumbag. I don't care about poor people. When the truth is the exact opposite. I do care about poor people. I do care about the inner city. I do care about black people. That's why I have the policies I have. You might think my policies are wrong on a factual level, but it has nothing to do with my morality. Right? We've been doing the same policies, right? Why is it that the areas where you see the worst living situations have been controlled by people that have advocated these war on poverty policies for decades, 50 years in some cases, half a century. Places like Detroit, Chicago, Baltimore. You know, I talk all the time. Like, I've read about this. I've seen people talk about it. You had this Democrat, Senator Moynihan, who did this report in the 60s, early 60s. It's called the Moynihan Report. And it said that it was a national travesty that something like, what was it, like 25% of black children were born out of wedlock, like single-parent homes. And so we needed to fix it. So, and by the way, make no mistake about it, almost all statistics and studies show there are 3 things that you need to do, right, to keep out of, to ensure that you have a successful life. Graduate high school, have a full-time job, and be raised in a 2-parent household. So, single-parent households, that's a really big issue, right? And there's all sorts of reasons. You need, you know, in order to like have an income, it's better to have a 2-parent household. In order to have proper affection and discipline, you need to have a 2-parent household, etc. A lot of these situations you see are tragic. You know, if I grew up in the inner city, I know I would have failed. Maybe you're just living with your mom and you have 6 or 7 siblings. And your siblings have to come together to try to take care of each other because the situation's so bad. Then when you grow up, the cycle repeats. So that's why, even back then in the 60s, like 25% of people in single-parent households, like, wow, we got to enact these policies. So you could go to, he happens to be black, conservative commentator Larry Elder. He talks about he was young in this time, and he remembers government officials coming into the black community, knocking on doors saying, hey, you know, we could give you money if the father wasn't living here. And so it incentivized single motherhood. They basically told generation upon generation of people in these inner cities, hey, if you pump out kids and you don't have a father around, the government will be the dad and we'll give you all this money. So, predictably, that's what happened in a lot of these communities. And they were told they were victims and that the world was out to get them. Now, if you grew up like that, if you're a kid and you're in a single-parent household and you have a bunch of siblings and you're struggling to have money and you go to school and it's a hellhole at school and you're basically made fun of if you're trying to educate yourself and you're attacked and there are gangs around and you're told your whole life, you know whose fault it is? It's this country. This country is racist. You do what you need to survive. You're a victim. Predictably, that's going to put out disenfranchised, jaded people that will then continue that cycle. My plan is to do the opposite, to say we don't treat people based on their skin color. We treat everyone by the content of their character. I understand by doing that now, there are all sorts of families, individuals, races, religions, other categories of people that can claim that the government has screwed them over historically. The truth is there's nothing we can do about it, and so we just need to have a clean slate going forward. Right? So I'm against those policies. We've had those policies. You know what the number is now? It's like 75% of black children are born out of wedlock, like to single-parent households. 75%, 25 is a national travesty. By the way, the number is over 50% for white people. So It's not a racial thing. It's the economic group. It's the fact that, and then there's claims that LBJ said we'll have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 100 years. I don't know if that's true or not, but you can see that mentality. When you make people reliant on you, you take away self-motivation. You take away self-liberty. I talked about this in my video the other day here. Michel Foucault, a left-wing postmodernist who I disagree with, but he talks a lot about the concept of biopower, that you have to be skeptical when you rely on the government for your sustenance. Because if you give the government the power to give you life, you also give the government the power to take away your life. And so it would be a viable strategy to say, if we just give this group of people a bunch of stuff and call them victims and say they're special and everyone's out to get them, they'll keep voting for us. And that's exactly what you see. Why are things worse when it comes to single-parent household and a lot of other issues in a lot of these inner-city communities than they were pre-civil rights era? How can that be? If we've tried one set of policies for 50 years and they've made the situation so much worse, why is it immoral of me and it's not caring of those communities for me to say, maybe we should switch policies? But that's what the Democrats and the establishment are able to do. They control the narrative and they say, if you don't agree with us, you're an immoral person. And it's literally, they try this on almost every issue. Illegal immigration. I've had it out with these people. Obamacare was another one. Like, let's take illegal immigration. I wrote, one of these days I'll do a video just on this, but I wrote this. This is probably 2006. I remember writing this write-up. So illegal immigration had two arguments, the people that talk about it. And it's the same with Obamacare. Oftentimes, what happens is, in an attempt to appeal to everyone, if you just leave these people talk, they contradict themselves, like almost within the sentence. So the two arguments that were made about illegal immigration was, one, it's immoral not to accept them all in. We have to treat these people with dignity and allow them all in. And then the second argument was, and by the way, they're crucial to our economy because they do jobs that Americans won't do because the wages are so low, right? And so if they weren't here, the price of our, fruit would go through the roof or, produce, things like that. And I was like, wait a minute, these two arguments contradict themselves. Like, how can you make this moral argument to me when you're then making the economic argument, right? And here's why. Basically, the argument is, look, the employers that work that own, the farms or wherever that the illegals are doing the jobs Americans won't do, it's because they're paying such a low wage. And therefore, for me to have my cheap fruit, I would like illegals to come here and work horrible backbreaking jobs at next to nothing wages so that I could get my cheap produce. In other words, they're making the argument, I want to profit off other people's. I want illegal immigrants to come in so I can profit off their suffering. And as soon as you make this argument, the gut reaction, their first argument will be, but wait a minute, it's still better than what they have in their country. Oh, that's the argument for slavery, right? The exact same argument. That's what slaveholders said. Well, these people wouldn't be capable. If we left them in their own country, if we just left them alone, they wouldn't be able to sustain themselves. At least we put a roof over their head. At least we feed them square meals, right? So it's a win-win. They get food, they get shelter, they get to stay in the country. We get cheap products that they're sweating off the sweat of their labor. That's incredibly immoral. Yet your argument is, if I don't believe you, I'm immoral. Then they'll say, this is the next argument they'll make predictably, right? They'll say, oh, no, we still want to be moral. We want to bring these people in, and then we think we should pay them a living wage. They should get paid what the work's actually worth. Okay, but you just told me that if these owners paid Americans what the labor was actually worth, the economy would be in a tailspin. Produce prices would go through the roof. So why don't we just pay the Americans a living wage? Instead of, why do we need to bring in the illegals to pay them the living wage? So in other words, the economy argument's crap. It's the same with Obamacare. They made the same type of argument with Obamacare. They do this all the time. One, the first argument was, we have to give everyone health care. It's the moral thing to do. Right? That's the first argument. The second argument was, healthcare prices are out of control because people go to the emergency room and don't pay for services. Well, wait a minute. I thought you just said there were people suffering, unable to get care. Now you're saying, oh, you're concerned. If we do your plan, it will save money for people like you. And that was the truth of Obamacare. Climate change is the same way, right? George Carlin, who I hesitate to use comedy bits too much on policy, but I think Carlin's right about this. And I think there's a lot of truth in a lot of comedy. George Carlin said, there's not a problem with climate change or global warming that's a danger to the earth. When people say that, what they mean is it's a danger to them. They want their personal situation to be comfortable. He's like, the earth will shake us off like a bad case of fleas. And that's true. Most of the time, these people are making these grandiose moral claims. They're doing it for selfish reasons. And I could prove it, too. Because morality isn't about, and this is what I'm getting to with the Christianity Today thing as well. Morality is not how you vote. Morality is not how you talk. Morality is, what do you do in your life? I could talk until I'm blue in the face about how we should give homeless people money. But if I'm walking down the street and a homeless person holds out their hand and I'm like, get away from me. Does that make me moral just because I talked about, let me give you another good comedian that illustrates this point. Louis C.K. has this bit. It's hilarious. It's one of my favorite bits he did. He's talking about being on an airplane, and he's in first class. And he says, he sees these soldiers coming home. This soldier. He's still in his camo, and he's got his big bag, and he's probably getting to go visit his family after serving somewhere. And he's like, he's kind of making fun of the foreign wars. He's like, this guy at least thinks he's doing the right thing. He's serving. And he's like, and so I thought to myself, I should give up my seat for this soldier. What a noble gesture. That'd be a great thing. And the audience applauds. And he's like, I didn't give up my seat. But I thought, what a good person am I for thinking that maybe I should. Right? Which, it's a hilarious joke. And it perfectly illustrates the problem with these people in the Democratic Party that are speaking about morality. All of these issues, climate change, it's a moral issue. Immigration, it's a moral issue. Healthcare, it's a moral issue. Like all of these, that's what they claim. Yet when it comes to actually doing something, they do nothing in their personal lives. The idea, when people say, well, Jesus would have voted for this, or a real Christian would vote for this, that's ridiculous. Voting's complicated. Almost nothing, no issue that you could vote on is just a straight issue. Almost none. Ending government corruption, that'd be one. But there's always pros and cons to everything. Okay, we have open borders. There's a lot of cons to that. Okay, we have very restrictive borders. There's also cons to that. You decide what, you weigh those pros and cons, you factor in your personal values and belief set, and then you make a judgment. But that doesn't make you a moral person. I had this argument with Obamacare. I come from a very poor area of the world. My family's pretty poor. I've never made more than $15 an hour, personally. I had these people tell me, how moral they are because they were voting for healthcare that would benefit me. It didn't. That was a lie, as I knew. But oftentimes these people were quite wealthy. It's immoral that there are people out there without healthcare. I would tell them, I'd be like, I can give you 10 people right now that don't have healthcare that need it, that I personally know. Will you give money to help them? Well, no. People like Bernie, incredibly generous with other people's money, isn't he? But he's taking all the tax breaks he can handle. You're not moral because you want other people to do something. I'm not a good person because I say, I would like to take money from this group of people and give it money to this group of people. That doesn't make you a good person. That's not a matter of morality. It doesn't necessarily make you a bad person either. But to claim that you're somehow more moral because you believe that is ridiculous. Now, if you were taking money from yourself and giving it to those people, then that's a moral action. But you don't do it. You don't give to charity so you could brag about it. That's what morality is. Morality is your actions. Not what you say, not how you vote. What are you personally doing? Now let's take all these moral issues. Climate change. Everyone in Hollywood and the Democrats yell at us about climate change. Well, they fly around in private jets and own 3-4 houses that use more of a carbon footprint than we will, the average person, low-income person will in 10 years. Immigration. Oh, we should be welcoming and loving and welcoming all these people of different cultures into our communities and open borders and this and that. Well, they live in gated communities. Guns. Oh, we need to eliminate guns, blah, blah, blah. Well, they have armed guards. Every single issue. That's why it's like, please, stop making it about morality. You want to say, hey, I think these are the policies we should have about climate change because I think that it's a significant issue. Fine, but don't tell me I'm less moral than you if I disagree with your policies. Because once you bring morality into it, then it's fair game for me to say, okay, you're not living as you preach. That's what's funny about them bringing up this Christianity Today garbage. Oh, they're so immoral. They're hypocrites. That sums up the Democratic Party perfectly. Yes, if there are Christians out there saying, you know, I think everyone that's an adulterer should be punished, but then they're cheering on Donald Trump, that's some hypocrisy. But mostly that's not what I see. I know very Christian people that vote for Trump and say, as a person, there's a lot of things I don't like about him. I don't like the fact that he could possibly be an adulterer. I don't like the way he talks sometimes. I don't think it's very Christian-like. But I'm not voting for him based on his personal behavior. Right, evil smile. Well, that's how you know it's garbage. They don't even believe they're on garbage. If they believe we're all dead in 10 years, wouldn't the coastal cities, where almost all the population believe that, be building levees right now? But no. Would Obama, would he have bought that property, beachfront property? Nope. Yeah, and you're also right, Evil Smile, that's exactly what it is. You retreat to the moral argument because you can't win the factual argument. And that's exactly what the left does now. No, not everyone. There are people that will have a serious discussion with you, like about tax cuts or something like that. What's the big argument against tax cuts? It's immoral. It gave money to the rich. I had this, when I talked to this guy, Destiny, I did this debate. He talked about how immoral it was. I was like, how do you explain the economy doing well? By the way, if the tax cut was so bad, because that's what they say, it was a big giveaway to the rich. It was a big giveaway to the rich. Then how do you explain the fact that since we've had the tax cut, we still had records broken for the amount of taxes that the federal government got? So all I'm saying is, there's room for disagreement on these policies, but this moral preening that we see from the left is absolutely ridiculous. And if people on the right do it, they're ridiculous as well. You know, but I thought this whole story was a joke, this Christianity Today's thing. Real quick, while I was talking about Obamacare, is anyone else, like, really impressed with the lack of self-awareness on the left? People like Bernie and all these other people. AOC, talking about what a nightmare our healthcare system is. This is the system that you all told us was going to be awesome and save everything. And now you say it's a disaster. All these stories, AOC, I had to go through 56 different options. I didn't know what to do. And Bernie and all these people, all the costs of healthcare and things are so bad and blah, blah, blah. This was the plan your party told us was going to be a huge success. Now all you could do is talk about how terrible it is. So why should we give you more power? Sorry, this is kind of a non sequitur, but it reminds me of, do you ever see these commercials? You'd see a commercial, it's like, Tide detergent. Oh, our Tide detergent's the best detergent ever. It'll get all your stains off, man. 99.9% of stains eliminated. Tide detergent. Buy Tide. It's the best. And then, like, after a while, you'll see something like, new Tide Ultra. Works 50% better. That old Tide sucked. It left stains on your shirt. But new Tide Ultra, trust us now. Tide Ultra will get all your stains off. It's like, wait a minute. That's what you said about the old Tide. And now you're admitting that the old Tide sucked. It's the same way. It's like, oh, man, trust us, man, Obamacare. Just give us a bigger part of this huge sector of the economy, and we swear everything's going to be so much better than it was. And now they're like, oh, it's a disaster. Obamacare's a disaster. Give us more control over it, and this time we'll make it better. This is always the problem with giving governments more power. Always. Every single time. Take the Patriot Act, right? This is the example I give. We were told, you got to sign away your Fourth Amendment rights. We got to sign the Patriot Act. It's going to be invasive into your life. You got to basically get fondled every time you want to travel through an airport, blah, 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 blah. All of this in the name of fighting terrorism, right? Okay. Now, let's say the day the Patriot Act gets passed. Let's do a Schrodinger's cat example. Let's say it gets passed, and there's two possible paths. Path A, Patriot Act gets passed. 10 years after it gets passed, not one terror attack on U.S. soil. Do you think there's even a chance that the government at that point goes, okay, we'll repeal the Patriot Act now, it did its job, no terror attack, great. They'll say, oh, see, we were right to demand to take those rights away from you. It saved us from terrorist attacks. That's what they'd say. It proves that we were right. Now, let's go the other direction. Let's say we pass the Patriot Act and terrorist attack explode. Way more in the following 10 years than the previous before the Patriot Act. Do you think that the government's going to say, oh, well, we were wrong, the Patriot Act didn't help, so we'll get rid of it? No, they'll say, the attacks are proof that we need more government control. And so in either scenario, you're always advocating for more government power. That's what the Democratic Party is now. That's what the Green New Deal is. Every time we give them, we know the government's incompetent. We know it. The government and the media the Congress and the media are currently in a tight race for who is the most distrusted entity in the United States. I think congressional approval is 17%. I think the media is lower than that even, believe it or not. So why would we give these buffoons more power? They can't even balance a budget. Give us Obamacare and we swear it'll make things better. We give them Obamacare. Well, things are worse. Now, yes, I do understand there is an argument to be had. Well, no one said it would be perfect. I get that. But that's not what the Democrats are saying now. They're not saying, it's pretty good, but it's not perfect. They're saying it's a disaster. That was their plan. Take something like reparations, right? And I'll show you how I'm applying this to healthcare in a second, right? Here's something I say about reparations. I'll hear people say, we need reparations for black people. That's the problem. That's why, all the problems in the black community, it's reparations. So I asked someone, be like, give me the minimum dollar amount of reparations that we could give to ensure that then, at that point, after the community gets these reparations, we could no longer say, it was because of past injustices and things are going on. So what is it? Is it $10 trillion? Is it $100 trillion? Just give me the number. Even if it's outlandish and could never happen. Give me the number. At what point can we say, these resources, the amount of resources and money and value that we put in, now we can say, finally. And you know what the truth is. They'll say, well, there'll never be enough. Exactly. That's exactly right. Only total capitulation and control. 100% control. That is the only thing that's acceptable. If you give them 99%, they'll claw and scream for the last 1%. It's the same with the Green New Deal. It's the same with healthcare. They will not be happy until they have total control over that industry, whether it be the energy industry with the Green New Deal or the healthcare industry. And then once they have total control and there are still problems, they'll demand total control of other things over all aspects of your life. They'll never recommend giving control back. It will never happen. Only opposition people springing up fighting against the government control will be able to make those arguments. The people that control the levers of power are never willfully going to give it up. Their solution is always more power for me. AOC, who is objectively one of the dumber people in our Congress, which is saying a lot, truly believes that she knows better than all of you, and if only she was the dictator who had all of the power, things would be better. She truly believes it. Give us Obamacare. We need Obamacare. Oh, we need it. It'll make things better. We give them Obamacare. Immediately. Oh, we need more. This is one of the... Just once you understand that they want total control and power, then all of a sudden you can make predictions. You can sound like a really smart person by making predictions. You can sound like Rob. It's not that I'm that smart. It's just that that's a simple truth. No, I'm not going to eat a Tide Pod for views. I'm not beyond eating a disgusting amount of food for views, but no Tide Pods. I don't even think I can afford Tide Pods. We get like generic bulk detergent. But I do have a washer and dryer, so I'm doing all right. Right. Exactly, Evil Smell. There's no amount of reparations. The day we would give, whatever, we could give the entire GDP to inner city black communities. And the next day, if there was a shooting or something, they'd say, the problem is the history of slavery. The reparations didn't solve it. They'll lie to your face and say, if we just had this, it would solve it. And then as soon as you give it to them, they say, we need more. And so I was able to make predictions like this. The Democrats basically do want open borders. No, that's ridiculous. They would never advocate for something like that. Now we see they are. Yeah, the Democrats basically do want to ensure that no American has access to any gun. They would never talk about gun confiscation. They would never do something like that. And now that's exactly what they're doing. That's the problem with the gun debate. Now, I'm not going to sit here. A lot of you probably know more about guns than me, right? But I know this. I know what the purpose of the Second Amendment is. All my family hunts. I'm terrible at it. I've done it. I'm terrible. But I love hunting. Sportsmanship. I get all that. But the Second Amendment was about protecting us from government tyranny. And it gets laughed off. But that's exactly why it was there. I mean, we have an FBI that's so corrupt that they're using opposition research to spy on a presidential guy. Oh, I mean incompetent. They're just incompetent. My bad. They're so incompetent they forgot. They didn't know you weren't supposed to falsify evidence to say the opposite of what it actually said. They didn't know. It was just incompetence. So don't act like it couldn't happen. But despite I don't know a lot of the specifics of guns and things of that nature, my brother-in-law and father-in-law run a gun shop. They know more about it. I love listening to... It's like I love listening to mechanics, too. It's not something that I'm super into as far as, like, knowledgeable about, but the people's passions and knowledge for it, it's mind-blowing to me. It's a really cool thing, I think. So I look at an issue like bump stocks. You had this Vegas shooter. I get it. I get what it is, right? You could rapid fire from a semi-automatic, basically simulating some form of automatic fire. So it's like, okay, I could see maybe making the argument. Maybe we should ban bump stocks. Now, there's a problem right out of the gate, which is basically you can make a bump stock at home. So how are you going to ban something that anyone who's ever watched an episode of MacGyver could figure out? But there's a more fundamental problem, and that is, and this is why you could get why the NRA and staunch Second Amendment advocates are unwilling to give in. Because the other side will never be content. If you say, oh, okay, give up bump stocks, Literally that day, as soon as you capitulate to them, they'll be like, okay, now on to the next thing. So you might as well just draw a line in the sand and say, no, we're not going to go any further. Because you'll never be happy until we're all totally disarmed. Because you want total government control of our lives. That's what you want. And again, I use this example all the time. You hear about like dissension in the Democratic Party, the AOC wing versus the Pelosi wing. Pelosi doesn't dislike AOC's policies. Pelosi dislikes the fact that she knows that they need to have a slow, incremental government control of your life. And AOC's spilling the beans. AOC's telling the truth of what Pelosi actually wants. Green New Deal, total control of the energy sector. You shouldn't be allowed to own a car. You shouldn't be allowed to make the choice to eat meat. They should have guaranteed jobs, guaranteed money for all of you. Total control of our economy. That's what the Democrats believe. Not all of them, maybe not the guy down the street or whatever. But that's what the leadership of the Democratic Party believes. And so Pelosi's pissed because she realizes the average American's not going to willfully vote for that if they know it. They have to be lied to. They have to be gradually led by the hand down that direction. So that's what's going on. But this Obamacare is just a great example. Now, I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be some genius. Healthcare is a very difficult problem. And I criticize the Republicans. Trump tried his best. He wanted to make healthcare an issue in the 2018 election. The Republicans told him to shut up about it. So they need to come together on what their plan's going to be. I personally favor more of a private type plan. I don't have all the details worked out. State competition, right? Incentivizing non-insurance payment methods, perhaps. Competition amongst drugs for drug prices. And then there's some other harsh things that we have to talk about. I'm a fat guy, but I haven't been to the doctor in a long time, but I know I have a problem with my sugar, and I'm trying to self-regulate it, right? Now, I can sit here and feed you a line about it's hereditary or this. It's because I'm a fat guy, and I don't eat well, and I don't exercise as much as I should. That's what it's about, right? Should my poor health decisions impact average Americans? I don't think so. Why should someone doing things the right way have to pay for my mistakes? Now, I have health care. In fact, I have the option at this point not to have it, and I pay, a decent percentage of my wages to ensure that I have health care. So I'm at least taking care of that portion of it. But I think I was reading when I was running for Congress trying to come up with a health care plan. Something like 30%, I think, and I'm pulling this number out of my butt, but I looked it up at the time. Something like 30% of our healthcare costs are complications of obesity and diabetes. And most of those, like 80-something% of those cases, are due to poor living habits. Not because you were born with type 1 diabetes or glandular issues or something like that. So we need to ask ourselves, are complications with smoking? You smoked. Are we going to incentivize government taking care of this bad behavior? Are we taking money from people that live correctly? And we do this all the time. That's the idea of quantitative easing, right? By the way, the idea that we have low interest rates. Low interest rates benefit borrowers and it harms savers. So if you did things the right way and you're saving money, not something I did good at, you're punished. And we say, well, we take that money away from you. We're going to, just with the rates an example, but even with like the Bernie type plans, you get punished because of people that lived riskily. Right. You're right, John. You're absolutely right. That's one of the reasons Beto got a hammer. And the last thing I'll say about this is we already see the Democrats' utopia. We see it. There is an area of this country where the Democrats have near total control, where they've implemented massive government redistribution plans. Blech. They've instituted Green New Deal type plan, all this type of stuff. We see There is a place that's going in that direction. San Francisco, Los Angeles. It is a return to feudalism. That's what they want. Yeah, Dib, I'm not gonna sit here and BS people. I got an exercise bike. I was doing really good, and then here's the problem I have. I was doing really good. I'd lost like 10 pounds, and it was like, oh, Thanksgiving's coming up. Well, since I'm gonna be eating crappy in Thanksgiving, I might as well just eat crappy the week leading up to it. Oh, and then my other family's Thanksgiving's the next week, so I'll just keep it up. And no use to riding the exercise bike. I ate like crap today. Next thing you know, 2 months later, it's like, So we'll see. We'll try a New Year's resolution thing, but I am trying to get healthier. I am. There's a bunch of other stuff that I resolved to try to do. We'll see how it goes. But again, it kind of all circles back around to everything I've been talking about here for the past hour. This idea of morality, too. We incentivize wanting other people to take care of us instead of taking personal responsibility. Here's the truth, right? I'm no great philosopher. I'm not super well read. But I know this, and I've heard other people say this. Life sucks. It's unfair. It's brutal. It's cruel. It'll throw some of the most painful, heart-wrenching, unfair garbage at you. You might be the nicest, most moral, great person in the world, who's healthy, who does everything the right way, and you get diagnosed with some terrible disease through no fault of your own. Everything could be going right from you, and you lose a loved one. Your job could fire you despite you're the best employee in the world. All of this stuff could happen. All we could do is control what we control and how we react to this stuff. Now, yes, there is a role, I think, for some sort of social safety net for the government. But when your go-to is the government will provide, you're making a huge mistake. You're taking away what makes humans humans. Personal responsibility, liberty, freedom and responsibility, two sides of the same coin. It sucks. It's a terrible burden. But I bet you, if you're honest with yourself and you're in a bad situation one way or another, and you look at yourself in the mirror, you can see that you're responsible. One of the things that I was taught by my family, which I think is a really good lesson. Yeah, that is awesome, Dib. That's great. When things are going good for you, thank the people around you. Understand that all of the people, not your government, but your friends, your family, the people that do things that make your life worthwhile. Thank them when things are going bad. Good. When things are going bad, don't blame them. Blame yourself. It's like a good quarterback. A good quarterback, when they win, he's like, yeah, the team did great. When they lose, they say it's my fault. That's how you should act in life. If you live that way and you truly believe it, I'm not saying you'll be a millionaire or you're going to have the best life, but you'll be better than if you took the opposite tack. And 3 shots of rum and some tea. That's not a bad diet. You should market that. Dib Siverak's diet book. 3 shots of rum and some THC. I'd check it out. I'll be honest with you, Dib, probably wouldn't buy a hardback. Maybe softback. But, so the Democrats are the exact opposite, right? You heard it in Obama. You didn't make anything yourself. The government. That's treating people like children. There's this idea of Jordan Peterson talks a lot about archetypes, like the overbearing mother. She'll take care of you. You never have to want for everything. All your food, your shelter, your needs. You never have to do anything. The overbearing mother takes care of all of it. But it comes at a terrible price. You have no freedom. You have to stay with her forever. It's the same with these huge government. And it's not, I don't believe that a lot of these people that are advocating, some are crappy on that, but I think a lot of them are misguided. They think they're doing the right thing. I doubt Stalin got into it saying, hey, I'm going to murder 25 million of my own people. But what happened? He said, I'm the man with the plan. I want total power. I'll solve everything. And so then problems started to come up. And people started to criticize him. And he said, shut those people up. I need more power. We got to do things this way, that way. And the next thing you know, it spirals out of control. That's what happens. The more decentralized, the better. Yes, there will never be a perfect system. And no, I'm not advocating anarchy or anything like that. We definitely need some form of mix. You don't want, I'm not a pure libertarian or a pure anarchist. I'm not. But this idea that we need to have the government solve all these problems is ludicrous. So I have 3 more things. I'll probably only go for another 15, 20 minutes. So I was going to do, I'm not going to go through this like I was, but let me give a shout out to Rand Paul. Ron Paul, his dad, was my favorite politician ever. And I like a lot of what Rand Paul does as well. I don't think he's as good as Ron, but one of the things Rand Paul does, though, that is awesome is every year around this time of year, he does his Festivus celebration. For those of you who don't know, Festivus was a made-up holiday on the show Seinfeld. And basically, it was Festivus for the rest of us, people that didn't have a holiday. And so George's dad came up with all these crazy gimmicks. One of them is the airing of the grievances for Festivus. And Rand Paul every year does his airing of grievances. So check it out on his Twitter feed. It's really funny. He's great. He makes fun of Trump. He makes fun of McConnell. He makes fun of the Democrat. He's making fun of Trump and McConnell, but he obviously is for most of what they're doing. He's making fun of the Democrats. He's obviously against. But, it's funny. And there's 2 reasons I bring it up. One is because the humor is important. Look, I think that we're involved in a critical time in politics in this country. I think that there's currently a coup going on. I think this is the best chance we'll probably see in my lifetime to actually put a dent in the establishment and the deep state and their total control and not caring of what the average American thinks. I truly believe that. The stakes are very high. But you still have to have a sense of humor. You still have to have joy in your life. If that's all you think about every day, if you think about the enormity of the stakes and the crimes that are going on, you'll go nuts. And it's the same if you're in Washington fighting this, like Rand Paul. So I think it's a good thing that he's joking around. And I also think it's relatable to people. It's really funny. One of the things he says is, he's like, Congress did accomplish some good things this year. For example, me and Mitch McConnell put forth a bill to legalize hemp. He's like, Mitch thought that hemp was weed. He thought you could smoke it. And I had to basically tell him, no, Mitch, that's not the way it goes. And he's like, and this is the hilarious part. He's like, but then again, he's like, maybe weed is a gateway drug because after that, Mitch got the nickname Cocaine Mitch, which is hilarious. That's a hilarious joke. So good on Rand Paul for that. But the other thing is, and Rand Paul does very well, is he goes through a list of a lot of government waste. Millions of dollars spent on frogs' mating habits. Millions of dollars spent on providing books to schools in Afghanistan. Millions of dollars spent on Google searches in Hawaii. Now, the way this gets done is, millions of dollars in a $1 trillion economy doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is. We have a $22 trillion national debt. Trump just signed, what was it? How much was the omnibus bill? $750 billion? After he promised never to sign something like that again. And there's all kinds of crap in that bill. Shame on Trump for signing. I know why he did. He thinks he's got a political winner with this impeachment crap, and he's right. And that is the big issue, fighting back against that corruption. And so why distract from it with a government shutdown? Yeah, Rand Paul would make an awesome YouTuber. So I get that that's probably what Trump's being advised and what he's thinking. But I'm sick and tired of this, man. I'm sick and tired of always being told, oh man, the other side, the government spending with them is ridiculous. And then when our side gets in power, same garbage. $22 trillion in debt. That's insanity. Everybody knows that's not sustainable. Everybody. I'm for the tax cuts. I am. I think the economy's doing pretty good. I say that objectively, looking at the statistics. But also anecdotally, in my area of the world, I think people are doing better. Now, having said that, I do know a lumber mill around here that's laying people off because of tariffs. But I support Trump's tariffs with China if he holds out and gets a good deal at the end. We'll see. But at some point, the rooster, I'm messing up. It's late. I'm messing up. At some point, things will come home to roost. That's what I was looking for. I mean, the debt's out of control. It just is. So we need to do something, When I was pressed on this in that debate with Destiny, I was like, we could cut back a lot of military spending, though I would like to see, instead of cutting back the spending, stop spending it on the things we're spending it on and give more to the soldiers, give more to their health care and things like that. So it's not necessarily how much we're spending, it's where that money's being applied. Foreign bases that do nothing, foreign regime change wars. I'm sure we could have some cutback, but we certainly, it is an outrage that we have people, I don't care what you think of the wars, I don't care what you think of individual soldiers maybe you've met that you don't like. If you volunteer to serve in our armed services, it is an outrage that you don't, at least, at a bare minimum, have every medical need that stems from that, or even other medical needs, taken care of for the rest of your life. At a bare minimum. But I said I was for the tax cuts, but I also want to lower spending. And he was like, oh, how could you be, you're concerned about the debt, how could you be for tax cuts? Well, because we got to cut all over the place. By the way, as I said previously, tax cuts, we still took in record revenue, tax revenues. So it wasn't like, 1 year we took in $1 trillion in taxes, and then we had the tax cut, and the next year we only got 50 billion or 500 billion. No, it was like we got $1 trillion, and then the next year after tax cuts, we got 1.1 trillion. Which I think is proof that when you leave people keep their money, they spend it, and then the GDP grows, the economy grows, which means there is a bigger pool of which to take taxes. Right? It sounds complicated, but it's not. If you have a 12-inch pizza and you take 20% of it, you got that much pizza. 20% of a 12-inch pizza. But all of a sudden, if you got a 24-inch pizza, so double the size, it's actually way bigger than double because it's, regardless. And you're only taking 15%. That 15% of the huge pizzas, way more than 20% of the small pizza. Same idea. You leave people keep more of their stuff, the economy grows. So you could have less percentage taxed and still get more tax money. But we have to cut spending. Oh, the tax cut screwed you, Deb? Well, and here's the truth. Any specific policy like that, economic policies, there's always going to be winners and losers. Always. You just hope to do the most good for the country in general. But, I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, the horse and buggy companies got screwed when the automobiles came along. Sucks, but, we have to cut spending, and no one wants to talk about it. And Trump doesn't talk about it, and Rand Paul does. Rand Paul got, shat on by, you remember this? The 9/11 Victims Fund? I'm totally for the 9/11 Victims Fund. First Responders Fund. So you have a bunch of, firefighters and first responders that ended up getting ill, rushing in to save people in 9/11. And so they need their health benefits taken care of. And Rand Paul was going to vote against it, although he did end up voting for it. But the reason Rand Paul was going to vote against it was because he wanted to know where the money was coming from, because the bill basically provided all their health care benefits for the next 99 years. And so Rand Paul, as you would hope a responsible elected leader would, was like, hey, we're basically writing a blank check. I'd like to know where the money's coming from. And Jon Stewart and all the media shills came out and said, F you, Rand Paul. You don't care about the first responders. You didn't do that when it came to other bills. Yes, he does. He does that to every bill. More of this Democrats playing the morality card. Jon Stewart playing the morality card. Of course. It's easy to take the childish mentality. All of these people deserve everything paid for, and you're a horrible, terrible person if you disagree. But someone has to be an adult and say, I don't disagree that they deserve to have their bills paid for, but I would like to have a linear or I would like to have a specific discussion on where that money is coming from. We make all these promises, Social Security. I'll never get Social Security. I'm 35. I'll have to be 90 when I retire. That pool of money is gone. They've robbed it. But you talk about cutting any of these benefits, I get it. It's a political loser. But it's what's best for the country. Now, you triage it. You don't just say, so long, suckers, all you people that are on Social Security. You have to have gradual shifts. You have to have cutoff date that says, like, look, everyone over 50, we've made these promises to. You're going to keep. It's going to be people like me that you're going to tell, like, sorry, dude, the money's not there. But we have to be honest with you and start running our economy accordingly, as opposed to pie in the sky, we'll just print more fake money. Thank you, Dib. Way to be a great American. By the way, you bring up a great point. If you didn't read there, Dib saying, because of the economic bracket he's in, he actually lost out on the tax cut. One of the things I tell people is, I understand, look, everyone votes for how they want to vote. But it's startling to me, particularly on the left, you see these moralistic people, they claim that they're more moral than you. And most of the time when you get right down to it, they'll admit to you, well, this would be better for me. I'm low income, and so I think that, and I had young people tell me this, oh man, Obamacare, it's going to be awesome. Finally, I'll get insurance. I need insurance. And we're like all college age, like 24, I don't know, mid-20s. And my friends are going, one friend in particular I can think of, he had medical bills due to his own mistake, drunk driving, I believe. Anyways, oh, my medical bills are outrageous. Finally, Obama's going to take care of all of it. You're a scumbag for voting against us. And I tried to tell him, I said, listen, man, it's not going to work out the way you think it is. Young people are going to bear the brunt of it because the problem is you have this pool of people that are using the healthcare services a lot and they're not paying. And then you have a pool of people that are using the healthcare services and they have to pay more because of the people that are also using the services that aren't paying. And so that group of people that are using the services and paying more are saying, we don't want to absorb the brunt of these costs. And so their plan is, we need to get people paying for services that aren't using them. Right? So you have people using the services, not paying, people using the services and paying. So they're paying double, right? Let's just say the groups are even. 33, 33, 33, Third of the people using service, not paying. Third of the people not paying because they're not using the service. That means 1/3 of the people, those using the service, are paying the entirety of the amount. So that third goes, look, we know the people that are using the service and not paying aren't going to pay. So what we need to do is get the people to pay that aren't using the service. Now, what group is that? Overwhelmingly. Drum roll, please. Young people that don't go to the doctor that often, that don't have as many health problems. They need you to pay so that the older people can get their bills caught. That's what it's about. And I'm trying to tell my young friends this. I'm like, dude, so that same particular guy that I'm talking about, you know what the end result was for him? I remember 2 years later running into him saying, this is crap. Now I don't have insurance and I have to pay the tax penalty. Yep. But the reason I bring this up is sometimes you're voting for something that wouldn't be beneficial to you personally. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to vote. You vote for the reasons you want. I recommend why I vote and why I think one group's better than another, but we all have different priorities. I get that. But sometimes you have to, for me, it's like, I'm poor. Dude, I got tons of student debt. I vote for Bernie, wipe out student debt. That'd probably financially benefit me more than voting for Trump. But I understand it would harm the country significantly. So I choose to vote against what would be my, at least at face value, my best financial interest for the good of the country. And to each their own, but that's... So, yeah, that check out that Rand Paul. Just check out his Twitter feed. I think it's hilarious. just a couple more things. I thought it was worth talking about. I wanted to talk about this the other night. The entire fiasco with the circle game with the cadets at the Army-Navy game. Like, I don't have much to say that you haven't thought of yourself on this. Just the utter stupidity of this. But notice that, like, did you see the clip where Juan Williams refuses to apologize to the cadets? Because they did an investigation. Now I've seen a lot of lefty people saying, oh, of course, the military's own investigation into their people clears them of wrongdoing. It's so stupid. It's a joke. For those of you who don't know, first off, this has meant okay. This has meant three-pointer, and if you play basketball. This has meant, like, the circle game. I'm sure it's different rules for everyone. It's like punch bug with, like, if you see a Volkswagen Beetle, punch bug, punch someone in the arm. Stuff like that. The circle game for us was if you looked at the circle and you got to punch someone in the arm. Right? So, yeah, and I'm getting to that, John. That's the way it's always been. I'm sure the rules could have been different, like what exactly you did, how you did. But you'd always, like, usually you'd keep it, like, around your knee, and you'd hold the circle, and someone would look down, and you'd be like, and you'd punch him. That's it. Right? So, 4chan comes up with the idea they're going to say, this is a white supremacist symbol. How do they... I forget what the justification for how it was a white... Is it like KKK? Is that what it is? Supposedly it looks like KKK, or... I don't know. So now they're saying it's a white supremacist symbol. Of course, they do that in a trolling attempt, and they're so successful that the Democrats bite onto it. Why did the Democrats and the media bite on? Because they desperately need white supremacy to be this boogeyman that's way worse than what it is. Now, one of the big knocks, one of the only people I like on Fox is Tucker Carlson. I like him, Gutfeld, I like Hannity somewhat. At least they have good guests, and I think that they're telling the truth. Anyways, Tucker at one point said white supremacy is a myth, and everyone was like, oh, boycott Tucker. He's not saying that literally there are zero white supremacists. He's saying the idea that it's somehow a serious problem in our country is a joke. It's not. It's played up over and over again. They need this boogeyman, though. They need to say everything's a white supremacist. That's the fear they use to unite people. Right? It's not to say it doesn't exist, and they suck, and if you see them, and it's worth, letting the world know that white supremacy sucks. Just like it's worth letting the world know that black supremacy sucks. Or Asian supremacy, Hispanic supremacy sucks, etc. They all suck. Probably by sheer numbers, there's probably more white supremacists in the country than black supremacists. But that's because there's way more white people. I don't know. But that's what Tucker meant. That's it. So the media is willing to latch on to an obvious joke, an obvious troll attempt, because it benefits them. That they want that narrative. Wait, this is racist? Holy cow! We have never-ending evidence of people doing this, particularly white people. Oh my God! Racist, racist, racist. Never mind, we saw Adam Schiff during the impeachment thing, and that's something I've done before, like you're talking and you're doing something like that. We saw Adam Schiff doing it. Do you remember the media calling Adam Schiff flashing white supremacist hand signal in front of Congress? Nope, didn't hear that. Okay, Evil Smile. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not exactly where they get... I know it was just a trolling effort. So, the only thing I wanted to bring up about this is it's shameful how, of course, how they subjectively apply. I could show you LeBron James every time he makes a three-pointer, or Steph Curry doing this. They never get accused. I could show Obama doing it. I could show Hillary doing it. I could show other Dems doing it. Yeah, I hear you, Tim. Settle down, white people. So it's hypocritical, and it's used, again, young people, military cadets. They can't have a little fun. They can't play a game. Nope. They have to be called racist, be drugged through the mud, and for what? What we know is just a stupid troll game. But the other thing I wanted to say about it is this. Even if you hate Trump and you hate conservatives and, you're an intersectional Black Lives Matter, whatever, right? You're one of these social justice warrior, cultural Marxists, right? even if you're one of those and you're listening to me, you're making a huge mistake giving 4chan that type of power. You do realize that, right? Because once you then give them, what you're doing is giving them credibility. And then they'll be able to take things that you cherish and be able to say, oh, that's racist too. And you're going to have a tough time fighting back against it because you've given them this position of authority. Right? So let's say, what if 4chan comes out and says they have this lengthy troll explanation of why a donkey is a symbol of white supremacy? Does that mean the Democrats have to change their mascot? Every time that donkey's shown now, oh, that's a dog whistle to white supremacy. Now, I understand you all control the narrative and you don't mind being disgusting hypocrites. I get that. So you'll let it fly. You don't care. Did that happen, Evil Small? I was unaware. But yeah, I mean, that's the exact type of crap. When you start to say a group of known pranksters and trolls are now the authority on what is racist or not, literally anything that you in your personal life could do could just be deemed, oh, that's right. Because here's the truth. We're the first generation that there is no such thing as forgetting. Almost our entire lives are plastered online for the world to see. So you took a photo at a bar one time giving bunny ears. Who's to say 30 years from now, some troll doesn't say, oh, bunny ears meant that they're a pedophile. That's proof you're a pedophile. You have to answer for your, like, what? Or it's a white supremacy thing or whatever, you know? It's so silly. How don't you understand that once you give the mob that type of power, it's only a short time before the mob comes for you or the people you care about? Yeah, and Dib, like, there's this idea, like, when, I know you're joking around about, like, if a white dude kills a bunch of people. There's this idea, like, who was it? How did I put this? I think it was a comedian I heard once. It was like, hey, if I ever kill a bunch of people, I'm just going to write a manifesto that said Oprah. It was Oprah. She told me to do it. I watched Oprah's programming and just to see someone who's, you know, beloved by the media and the Democrats and people of power. Are they going to condemn Oprah? Of course they won't. We actually kind of see this happening where that doctor that she endorsed molested a bunch of people. No one's blaming Oprah, and she shouldn't be blamed, by the way. She didn't know, you know. Now, if he was a shoddy doctor and she should have investigated more, that's one thing. But his personal crimes, you know, I wouldn't blame her for that. But you see what I mean? Like, I don't understand if I was a white supremacist, like, let's say I ran the KKK, right? Yeah, exactly, John. Let's say I was running the KKK. Do they have no self-awareness? Does, like, David Duke have no self-awareness? And that's how you know. Like, if you watched my last live stream, I finished it talking about the Black Hebrew Israelites and what I was writing about them in January when the New York Times basically did a puff piece for them saying they were nonviolent, blah, 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 blah. And then that Jersey shooting, the anti-Semitic shooting, turned out to be Black Hebrew Israelites. So isn't that great? The paper of record wrote a puff piece on a hate organization claiming, well, they're not that violent, that then went on that same year to murder people. But no pushback on the New York Times for that, huh? Nope. But one of the things I mentioned was like, so let's say you're like they say in that New York Times piece, they say, oh, the Black Hebrew Israelites, they don't have political power like the white supremacist groups. What are you talking about? What power do white supremacist groups have? If your name's even remotely attached to anyone involved in any of these groups, you're a pariah for life. Donald Trump has to condemn David Duke every time he's on television. Or he's seen as a white supremacist. Who was that one guy, Steve King or whatever, that was like, I don't see what the problem with the term white nationalist is. which is a stupid thing to say, and he shouldn't be in office if he's literally that dumb and he can't understand the problem with that. Yeah, Tlaib did say that was white supremacy. It was garbage. It was black supremacy. Whoops. She didn't have anything to say about that. Just like, right, kids in cages, they put the picture up. Oh, remember the AP article there 3-4 weeks ago I talked about my one live stream? Some group in the European Union did a study that showed that in first world countries, the United States is the worst for detaining children. A bunch of Democrat organizations and stuff started tweeting about it. Oh my God, Trump. It was Stephen Miller, the Democrat War Room Twitter account said, it's because Stephen Miller, Trump's aide Stephen Miller, is a white supremacist. That's what this is about. And then the AP came out and said, oh, our bad. That was from 2015 when Obama was president. So we're going to delete the story. Delete the story? What, those kids in cages didn't matter? Rashida Tlaib, you thought supremacist attitudes were a problem with this shooting so much that you tweeted about it. And then when it turns out it wasn't white supremacy, it was black supremacists, you deleted the tweet. She could have put, I'm sorry, I blame white supremacy. It was black supremacy. This is something we need to fight as well. But she didn't, did she? She didn't care about black supremacy. So that's what we see with these kind of, the black Hebrew Israelites, right? Like they say, oh, the white supremacists have all this power, but they're loathed. And when I was reading and researching the black Hebrew Israelites in January, it amazed me, even anecdotally talking to people, but also reading about this. They're in cities all over the country. They just preach on the street corner, calling people homophobic and racist names, saying they should be hurt. They also are attached to 14 murders in Florida at one point. Yahweh Ben Yahweh was one of their leaders. He supposedly was involved in the beheading of a man, wanted white people's ears as trophies. At least all this was alleged. But the New York Times said they didn't have a history of violence. Okay. Racist, homophobic hate preachers on the street of most major American cities. And they're basically, it's just a fixture of everyday life. Now that's power. Put some KKK members on those same street corners and see what happens. There'd be a riot. The police would have to protect the Klan because they'd be beaten so severely. That's not power. And good. Screw the KKK, right? No love lost here. Fine. But you want to talk about power? Louis Farrakhan's an anti-Semite, radical black activist. He's been seen in photos with Obama, Congressional Black Caucus leaders. Politicians have cited him as an inspiration. Can you imagine? He had a group of white senators, congresspeople that were hanging out with David Duke. Trump's pictures of David Duke. Can you imagine? Now, which one has more power? Which one has more access to the political levers of power? But one of the things I said was the KKK are so low. David Duke, right? Why wouldn't he just come out and say the opposite of what he meant? So if David Duke really likes Trump, if I'm him, I'm just coming out like, yeah, man, I'm all in for Elizabeth Warren, and then come up with a reason. I'm David Duke, and I endorse Elizabeth Warren because we too think that the idea that Native Americans get special treatment and benefits for being Native Americans is a bad thing. So good on Elizabeth Warren for pretending to be one, to take away those rights from them. We're going to vote for Elizabeth. People hate the KKK so much they'd be like, oh, well, I guess I'll go the opposite of that. Don't want to vote while the KKK votes. Of course, the media and the Dems and everyone would say, well, that's ridiculous. Just because the KKK endorses Elizabeth Warren doesn't mean you're a racist if you vote for her. Of course, they'd be exactly right in that instance. But when it's a Republican, it's the exact opposite. So, I mean, just this idea that, these symbols and stuff, it's just stupid. The last thing I was going to talk about was kind of segues right into that. It was just Democrat anti-Semitism. And I talked about this in my last video. Look, call a spade a spade. This idea of there are a rash of anti-Semitic attacks, particularly in New York City, that are occurring, these aren't Klan KKK right-wing white supremacists doing this. We see footage after footage. They don't look like white supremacists. And there is a lot of anti-Semitism that comes from the left. Now, I have been hesitant to say someone is an anti-Semite for criticizing things. For example, who was it? Was it Omar that said it's all about the Benjamins? Like, basically she was criticizing Israel and like their influence on American politics and their lobbyist groups. I don't think that's anti-Semitism. I really don't. I think that we go too far. I think like you listen to people like Ben Shapiro, it's quite funny. He wants to defend, he had no problem initially smearing the Covington kids. He had no problem calling for the ouster of Rosie O'Donnell for her joke, But man, he'll defend people with this, that, and the other. But man, if you say anything that he perceives as anti-Israel, he'll fly off the handle. I have no problem with people of Jewish faith. In fact, I'm for moving the embassy to Jerusalem. I think that Israel has a right to decide where they want their embassy to be. I'm for that. I think that Hamas is a terrorist organization. I think that Israel's crapped on in the EU all the time, unjustly. I don't think they're perfect. I don't think that we should be allies that are going to war with people based on their whims. It's complicated. The truth is, much like all issues, there's a lot of ins and outs and nuances. But I think you could be a perfectly reasonable person and criticize our policies towards Israel, or criticize Israel's policies. But, and I'll say also to this, I try to give the benefit of the doubt if someone's criticizing. That doesn't mean that they're anti-Semitic. So I didn't come out against Omar and say your comments are anti-Semitic. But it's clear people like Farrakhan are literally anti-Semites. I mean, a week before the Pittsburgh Synagogue massacre, he was likening Jews to termites. And he's someone well respected within the Congressional Black Caucus, taking photos with Obama, etc. I think that probably Tlaib and Omar and those that, are for boycotts the BDS movement. I don't think being for the BDS movement necessarily means that you're an anti-Semite. Now, I think there is definitely a lot of anti-Semitism in the BDS movement, and it's just like movements we see in the United States, like I was talking about with the Democratic Party, where the reality is they want to go further than what they're telling. I'm pretty sure most of the people heading the BDS movement would seek the elimination of Israel as a country. They might not come out and say it, but I'm sure that's true. But nonetheless, you can support it and not be... Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say, Evil Smile. I defend Israel a lot. I think it's complicated. I criticize them, I defend them. But I think that they're like many other groups. It's like the Democrats we just talked to, where they default to, you can't disagree with me or you're immoral. It's the same with this group. Any criticism of us is anti-Semitism. It's racism. Like, no, that's garbage when Democrats do that about other communities. You disagree with us, you must be homophobic. You disagree with us, you must be racist. To me, it's the same type of nonsense. But it is clear that there is anti-Semitism on the left. At least, and I would argue that it's worse than the anti-Semitism on the right, because we all know to criticize legitimate anti-Semitism when it comes from the right. Like a neo-Nazi. We know that's garbage. We're all disgusted by that. Even if we, criticize Israeli politics or Israeli lobbying efforts, neo-Nazis are disgusting. We understand that. Right? But on the left, it's not called out. And in fact, worse, they deflect from how their attitudes lead to that and try to blame Trump. Yeah, thanks, Deb. Take it easy, man. We'll talk to you soon. Merry Christmas, too, to everyone, which I'll do a Christmas video Wednesday, but, yeah, Merry Christmas to you. But, yeah, and John, I don't know the specific nature of that law, but I assure people I'm not an anti-Semite. I have problems with any country having a significant influence on our policies. I kind of believe in the founders' idea of trade relations with everyone, alliance with no one. I think oftentimes we find ourselves in strange bedfellows, like regardless, like involving some, country in the Middle East that we're supporting or we're against, and a lot of times it seems to be more interested in helping Israel than helping our own country. Now, having said that, I do think that Israel gets cramped on in the EU a lot, so it is complicated. Like all of these resolutions against Israel. Look, if we had a neighbor, if Mexico was firing rockets into Texas like crazy, I'll bet we'd respond. And we wouldn't think we were terrible people for doing so. So it's a complicated issue. But I do think that I think that it's taken advantage of. So like you're saying, I don't know anything about this law, but a tragedy happens and then you respond too far by saying, oh, now you can no longer, whatever, like things like that. But so anyways, the reason I bring this up was the idea that they're trying to blame Trump all the time for anti-Semitism and stuff like that. They tried to blame him for the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting. The shooter actually put in his manifesto that he was pissed at Trump because he saw him as listening to Jared Kushner and Ivanka, and he was too pro-Jewish, and he lied to them. Right, John, that's exactly the point. Your rights being infringed because of some exaggerated threat is ridiculous. That's exactly the point. We see that occur in all sorts of communities, but certainly that is something I think is being taken advantage of. No, shouting fire on a national, that example that's used is kind of ridiculous. It actually is legal to shout fire in a crowded theater. For example, you could think there's a fire. Now, if your intent was to start a riot or to have people harmed, that's different. But you have the free speech to say that. Anyways. So they try to blame Trump for all this stuff, and then they hold him to a different standard, and they hold Republicans to a different standard. So today, Rashida Tlaib put out a video wishing people happy Hanukkah, and then proceeding to criticize Israelis' Palestinian policy. She has every right to do this, and I don't think it makes her an anti-Semite to do it. But I just want to point out, if you were to make a video that said, like Ramadan, right? Or I'm not very worldly. I don't know a lot of Islamic holidays. But imagine a senator or a congressperson saying, happy Ramadan to all the, my constituents of the Islamic faith. Maybe y'all try to stop, wearing suicide vests and bombing places all over the world. How do you think that would have flown today on the news? How do you think the Democrats would have played with that? I think it would have been the biggest story in the world today. Wait, what? You basically facetiously wish someone happy holidays while then denigrating their people? That's what Tlaib did. Again, she has every right to do it, and I don't think it makes her an anti-Semite. But that's because I'm someone of integrity, and I tried to hold people to the standards I have. But if we held Tlaib to her own standards, or if the Democrat held her to the standards they hold Trump to, they'd be outraged. So I just thought that was worth pointing out. And yes, despite everything we're talking about here, John and everyone else, and an evil smile, there are a rise of anti-Semitic attacks. I don't know how many. Sometimes it could be overblown. But I've certainly seen videos of people, like Hasidic Jewish-looking people, just like basically getting clubbed in New York City, just taken out. And I have no reason to disbelieve the numbers, even if they're exaggerated. But they only talk about them when they could attack the right with it. If you're truly concerned about anti-Semitism, you would talk about it all the time. And you can see it on college campuses as well. There is, right? Like, the truth is, it's a very difficult conversation. I could see being very furious and thinking that, like, what's the name of the lobby group, the Jewish lobby group? I'm tired, I can't think of it. But I can see being upset about that stuff. Fair enough. I'd share a lot of those concerns. But then it's like, you see it in a lot of college campuses where then it's like, oh, we don't want any Jewish, any Jewish speaker here. And instead, we'll cheer on like Hamas and Hezbollah. So it's going too far with the radicalism. Which, if you want to be a fan of Hamas and Hezbollah, that's fine too. But you see what I'm saying. AIPAC, that's it. Thanks, yeah. There's a nuanced ground, right? Not everyone has to totally agree. It's AIPAC. You got it right the first time, yeah. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. So, all right, 2.5 hours. So just a little bit about what I'm trying to do. I am consistently, again, thanks to Dib, a friend of mine, Milo, that are both, right, John, that's exactly what's going on. But it's not, the problem is, like, AIPAC to me, this is the last thing I'll say about this. AIPAC to me is kind of like the Fox News argument, right? Where you're right to criticize AIPAC, just like you're right to criticize Fox News. But it's only one side of the coin. In reality, we have foreign influence galore in our country. AIPAC's one example, but it's cool on the left to criticize AIPAC, so we're allowed to criticize them, which I stand by the criticism of a lot of AIPAC. I don't like this foreign influence. What about China's influence or the UK's influence? Right? Or all these other countries' influence? Well, we don't talk about them. It's the same with Fox News. Oh, it's cool to be like, Fox News sucks. Yeah, you're right. Fox News sucks. But we act like they're unique, like CNN and MSNBC don't suck as well. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about, like, the criticism of, like, Israel and their lobbying efforts. It's like, yeah. So, but, okay. Yeah, I'll be wrapping up here. So, what I'm going to try to do, I wanted to thank Dib and Milo for supporting me on Patreon. I put the links at the top of this chat and in the subscription if you want to follow me on Twitter, BitChute, Patreon, PayPal, or anything like that. If you're financially strapped, don't worry about it. I'll still be putting out content. But part of my New Year's resolution, in addition to getting healthier, is being consistent, being more consistent. And so in that vein, I will be trying to do a live stream every Monday night at 11 p.m., every Thursday around noon. And the reason I'm trying to do it different times is different types of audience. Maybe you're the type of person you can't stay up till 11. Maybe you're the type of person who's working at noon and you can't follow it. So I'm going to try. I don't think YouTube does a good job of promoting me. I try to set my videos at least 2 hours early saying, live stream coming up. But a lot of people tell me they don't get those notifications. So just to let you know, even if you're not getting the notification, unless I'm sick or had some kind of work-related issue, Mondays at 11, Thursdays at noon is the plan to be doing live stream. And I also want to, the rest of the days, be putting out at least one video a day that won't be live. I want to try to do more videos like that. I love doing the live stream because I feel like I'm actually talking to people. But YouTube doesn't promote them for crap. Most people want like a 4-minute video. And I'm trying to grow my channel. So I'm going to try to be putting out more stuff like that. So I'm trying to put out at least one thing a day on average. So that's the plan. So even if you're not getting notifications, you still know to look for me to try to put out that material. So, and as always, I really thank you. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do that. If you could recommend me some other people, I'm still trying to reach that goal of 1,000 YouTube subscribers. If you would like to do a video with me, you can always email me. The best way to email me, I have this YouTube account has an email address, but I never check it. So just rob.nor@gmail.com, which I'll put up there. But you can email me if you want to do a video. And if you have anyone who particularly would disagree with me that would like to do a video, I would love to do that. I would love to have a debate. I think I could be personable. I'm not going to be rude. Don't feel like if you come on and talk to me like, oh, if I disagree with you or I know more about a subject that I'll be crappy. I won't be. Even if we disagree, I assure you. So, but I think it's a lot more fun when people are participating. The Monday night videos are hard because of my setup, and I'm at work. I get off work at 11, but I have to stay here. So it's hard for me to have a guest just because of my setup here. But definitely in Thursdays or other times I could do guests. So thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it as always. And I will be doing videos tomorrow and on Christmas, but Merry Christmas to you all. If you celebrate some other holiday, happy holiday to you for that as well. But Christmas is awesome. To me, it's just all about the idea of getting to hang out with friends and family and just having a day where everyone could be excited. I love that. So Merry Christmas to everyone. I hope you guys have a great time and have a good one.